we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military industrial complex.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Today we got Eddie Bravo, musician, martial artist, author, podcaster. His jiu-jitsu school is called 10th Planet. He has schools all over the world. He has a band called Smoke Serpent. He has a podcast called Eddie Bravo Radio. He's very well known for beating one of the Gracies in 2003 as a brown belt in a jiu-jitsu tournament and the legendary Gracie family. And at the time, like I said, he was just a brown belt, so it was a legendary win and really kind of unknown at the time, and I think really was a big part of making him as popular as he is, and obviously his talent has a lot to do with that. He's a master of the rubber guard, like I said, musician, podcaster. He dabbles in a little bit of everything. So we actually, and he was really nice enough to do multiple interviews with me, because we did an interview late last year, 2014. As I record this intro, it's March 2015, and our first interview in 2014, the quality wasn't very good. He wanted me to call his cell phone, and I used my cell phone to do that. And unfortunately, in the studio, I don't have very good service, so it kind of made for a shitty quality show. I'm going to put that initial show at the end of this podcast, so if you want to continue listening and hear it, great. If not, no big deal. We probably talked about some of the same things just because it was so long ago, so probably neither of us remembered what we talked about specifically the first show. But this show seems like the quality's a lot better. I use Skype to call him, and it seemed to work out. So enjoy the show. And like I said, at the end of the show, you'll hear the older, very first time I talked to him, and it might be worth listening to. Also, remember to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Any guest that calls in using video, who has video capability, then you can actually visually see us talk, and I do a side-by-side video version of our episodes. Unfortunately, some guests don't have video capability, and I'll just upload the audio, but there are plenty of episodes where you can actually see me and the guests talk. Valerie Baber, Delicia the Cigar Vixen, Aaron Franz, who else? Just tons of guests. Adam Scorgi, Robbie Martin. So check out those episodes, and you can actually see me and the guests talk, so you can kind of put a face to the name and to a face to the opinions. Also, remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and I'm always tweeting our episodes, and anybody who retweets or shares it, all that stuff helps. If you like our episode, if you rate our episodes, all that stuff really helps, and it's really appreciated, and every little bit helps. And also, if you want to help the podcast, you can download Theory 6 Music, which is available everywhere you can find music, MP3 downloads, Amazon, Shazam, Google Play, iTunes, and that also helps. So I really appreciate it, and just continue supporting the show. Everybody who's listening, I really, really appreciate it. It's cool because with technology, I can really see where my fan base is and people who are listening to this show, and it's awesome to kind of see my statistics and see that I have fans from everywhere, from Asia to Africa to Europe to all different cities in the U.S., from Wisconsin and California cities to just everywhere, so it's just awesome to see that, and I really appreciate everybody who's listening. And I don't know how you ran into the podcast, but I'm glad you did. And like I said, all those other things like sharing and retweeting and all that stuff helps kind of spread the word. And actually, probably word of mouth is the best way to spread the word too. I know I've gotten a lot of people into this podcast just by talking to them and just telling them about it, and it's amazing how many people still don't know too much about podcasts and aren't really fanatics like probably I am. And really just sometimes I get them in the podcast just by telling them about mine and telling them about this uncensored media that's out there where you can download stuff for free and endless amounts of great shows out there and content, and you can listen to it in the car and make the time go by and maybe even learn something, or at least listen to something that might provoke thought. So thanks again, guys, and enjoy the show, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Eddie?
How you doing?
Not bad, man. Thanks for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, last time it was funny. We had like that half an hour conversation. I'm like, I could talk to this dude forever.
I don't remember. What was the podcast about again?
Well, last time we talked about music, and we talked about I want to get into like we're into a lot of the same stuff, like martial arts and conspiracies and music, and I play music, and you obviously play music, and so we talked about a bunch of stuff, and but we really
I remember now. I remember.
Yeah,
totally.
but we didn't get into too much of it because obviously when you get into a subject that two people are passionate about, time flies by. So I think that half an hour got filled up pretty quickly.
Oh, that's right.
But
now I remember.
But
and the sound quality was shitty, right?
Yeah, what happened was it's the first time. Usually when I do recordings, I have the studio in my cellar, and when I do recordings, usually I use Skype, and that's the first time I've used a cell phone. So I've never used a cell phone in my studio, and the quality. I think the combination of me using a cell phone and using it in my cellar, where the quality wasn't where the service wasn't very good, it kind of made for a rough interview. So this time I thought, like, well, how about I call him using Skype because I have a good Wi-Fi connection, and hopefully it'll make for a better, stronger connection. So we'll try it this way, and then hopefully it comes out pretty good. I can always use Pro Tools after and try to mess with it and try to get it as best sounding as possible. But I think it'll definitely be listenable.
Okay, cool.
But hey, yeah, thanks a lot for being with me, man. I actually, while I was waiting for you, I did a little bit of an intro already, so I already got your intro. I'm sure most people know who you are, but for people who don't, I already did your intro. And thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I know it's funny because I just had like I told you via email not too long ago. I just had my first child with a son on the 19th of February, and
congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Amazing, right?
Dude, it is. And it's funny because it's one of those things where you always hear it. I've heard you say it. I think I heard you talk about it once on a London Real podcast when you're on there, and you're talking about how life-changing and amazing it is having a child. And it's funny, you hear that over and over again. And even though you keep hearing it, like, you really can't grasp how much those words are real and how life-changing and perspective-changing it really is till you actually go through it. And it's one of those things where it's just like, even though like I heard it so many times and I thought like, okay, I get it. Yeah, it's life-changing. I'm kind of prepared for it. I get it. It's going to be life-changing. When you actually go through it, it's fucking amazing. And I remember when you first hold your child and you first hear your child cry, it's like, I mean, I cried. I mean, I'm sure most fathers probably did. And I'm sure, how was it with you? Like, how did it change your perspective on life? Because I mean, just with me, like, I look at life and I'm just like, how can anybody who have a child sweat the little stuff? How can anybody be corrupt or do all these bad things? When you look at like how your child is, you realize how much of this other stuff, money and power, how much of that is pointless almost. And did that affect your perspective on life a lot?
Well, I think that a certain percentage of the population, in the male population, I think they just don't. They're programmed not to really get attached and not care that much about their kids. I think it in a weird, crazy way, it's probably best for the species to preserve our species. I mean, maybe that's the best combo. Like if you're trying to design a species of animals and you're in charge of all the programs, you might learn that, if you had every male stick with their kids and and dedicate your life to your kids, it might make for a weaker species in the physical sense. Like if you have 40% of males just going out there and just spreading their DNA everywhere, that might be better for the species as a whole when numbers are concerned. So, but for the people that have the program to actually love their children with unconditional love, the way it changes them and the way it changed me was that all of a sudden, just like that, I've known this guy 1 hour, or not even, I barely know this guy, can't talk, doesn't know who I am, and I have to protect him with my life. And there's just no way around it. and you love it so much it's scary. You love it so much that if anything happens to it, you die. But it's worse because you're still living. So that's why that's how it changed my life. I love it so much. It's scary, and I understand why my mom especially. Why she would why I would drive her insane. I was at 10, 11, 12. I was on the streets with my friends, and we're clear across town, and we're just little kids on bikes. And I could only imagine how my mother felt when we were just gone. Like, we could have easily... My mom, her biggest flaw, I would say, is that she worries a lot. She worries about me and her kids and her grandkids so much. I got to tell her to stop worrying. It's bad for your heart. But knowing that she cares so much, I could only imagine what I put her through when I was a kid. And now I understand why, she yelled at me and we didn't get along so well. I was just constantly putting her in a state of fear that something would happen to me. So I wouldn't listen, so she had to get strict and mean. So now I get it, and if my kid is 10, or when he turns 10, and he wants to go out and with his friends on his bike clear across town, the city, I would be freaking out. I probably wouldn't let him. And then he would be mad, and then he'd want to leave, and I'd have to yell at him. I get it now. It's too quick. Anything happens to your kid, you die. But it's worse because you're living.
Yeah. Well, it's you're absolutely right. I remember when we were leaving the hospital, and my wife had a C-section, so we're in a hospital for like 4 or 5 days. And the nice thing about being in the hospital is that anytime you had an issue, you could just hit a button and a nurse was there. A nurse would help you with the breastfeeding. A nurse would help you with any questions. Would bring you your medical.
Yes.
And then I remember leaving the hospital, and me and my wife were looking at each other, and we're like, "Holy shit, we don't have the red button anymore. We can't ask for help. We're responsible for this person's survival." And it's a scary thought, it's a scary feeling when it hits you that you're responsible for this person's survival.
Maybe everybody goes through that, 'cause I went through the exact same thought process. Like, for 2 days, we were just hanging out, and the nurse would come in and take care of him. And once we got in the car and we drove away, I was thinking, fuck, this hospital's trusting us with this kid? They're just letting us... I felt like we were stealing it.
It does feel kind of like that. You're right. It kind of felt like, wait, is this mine? Is this officially mine? People are just going to let me walk out with it?
Yeah. You're just going to, you trust us with this child? It was scary because, if anything happens to it, you just, you start to sympathize with, anytime you see parents talking about how they lost their child, on TV, or even in a movie where it's acted. Even in acting, you feel it so much more. I cry all the time when I hear shit like that. Anytime I see anything like that on TV, my eyes start to water instantly. Because I just imagine how they're feeling. I can feel what they're feeling. I know what it's like. I know it. I could imagine what it'd be like if something tragic happened to my son. Oh man, I wonder how many people commit suicide after their kids die a tragic death. Is it high? Is it what is the percentage? Because I don't think I'd kill myself, but I know I'd probably want to. I feel like I want to. I feel like it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, that's definitely. I had growing up, my first band, this band Fitzroy I was in, and our bassist, his 16-year-old daughter or 16-year-old sister passed away, and it was from a shot. I think she was getting an asthma shot, and then it was just a basic asthma shot, and then for some reason they had some complications, and next thing you know, she had allergic reaction, and she ended up passing away at 16. And I remember being at his house when his parents showed up, and you couldn't say anything because nothing you can say when somebody's going through that will help. And it was just one of those things where you're looking back now, you're like, it's completely there's no way I could relate to that. There's no way I can even understand, even looking back now, how hard that must be, and the impact that has on your life, and how we talked about leaving the hospital knowing that you're responsible for this person, and then you almost feel like you didn't do your job, or possibly you start putting guilt on you, even though that you couldn't have done anything differently. I can see how you can feel guilty. You feel like you could maybe retrace your steps and maybe do things differently, or and it's just it's a feeling, like you said, that it's amazing if it's not a high percentage of people who kill themselves after losing a child, because and maybe you don't die physically, but I'm sure most of them die, emotionally and mentally, and you're just never the same person. And it's one of those things where just thinking about that must be one of the hardest things to deal with, because if everything goes as planned, we should see our parents pass away before us, and our kids should see us pass away before them. And when things get out of line and things don't go at the way that I guess supposedly things should go, if everything goes accordingly, then it just, I'm sure it breaks your heart in a way that there's no explaining or words for.
It's crazy.
Now we're both, one thing I love about your podcast, the Eddie Bravo podcast, is you talk about a lot of things I love, like martial arts and music, and I know you've had guys from Five Finger Death Punch, you've had conspiracy people like Sean Stone, who I've also had on this show. And I do kind of the same thing. I've had like Miss May I on the show, Levy from Miss May I, and the singer Enta Shikari, and I mix things up too with athletes and musicians and all that stuff, and it's fun because like all these people, they all seem to be really cool, but being into conspiracy thing, and being a father, and maybe it's just me because I've done the same thing where I do a lot of research, and I've had a lot of people on the show. And did you ever start, when it comes to your son, did you ever start some of your conspiratorial mind affect the way you looked at things that had to do with your son? Like, for example, in my case, vaccines, I was super scared of vaccines, and what are the doctors shooting up in my kid, and let me do my research, and I know they're telling me it's safe, but is it really safe? And then you hear about the CDC whistleblower and all this stuff. And did that affect you, with pharmaceuticals and the programming of the school system and all this stuff? Did any of that affect your fathering?
Absolutely, man. My son is vaccinated, not putting any of that garbage in his system.
Yeah, I'm the same way. They keep pushing for it, and I'm like, honestly, man, one, I want to see the ingredients, and two, they tell you it's completely safe, but yet, there are links to, there's a court specifically just for vaccines, and they have given money to families, which means that there has been a link to vaccines and autism. And then you just heard about the CDC whistleblower of late, which I actually had John Rappaport on to talk about. And and that's something that people are kind of just.
What did he say? What did he say?
Well, basically, they had a study where they had basically somebody who was a part of this study. This guy works for CDC. I think he was the author of this study, and there was a link to increase, and I think it was a mild increase. It wasn't a lot, maybe 3%, 4%, whatever it was. But there was a link that people who get the MMR vaccine had a 3 or 4% more likelihood of being autistic, and this guy basically had a guilt trip and came out and released this information. And the thing is that maybe it is only 3 or 4%, but at the end of the day, one, I don't trust pharmaceutical companies. I've had Dr. Gregory A. Smith on, who did the movie American Addict. I've had Dr. Brzezinski on, who a lot of people know for his his cancer treatment and fighting the FDA. And I'm one of those people that I just don't trust big pharmaceutical companies, because obviously the capitalistic world we live in, it's all about profit, not morals. And so it's one of those things where even though it's a small percentage, I think parents should fucking know, regardless if it's 1%. If there's a 1% likelihood of your child having, any symptoms of autism or any other type of symptoms because of this vaccine, that should be public and people should know. And then it should be our choice as parents to make those decisions.
Yeah, so what's going on is so there's proof that that vaccine increased your chances of autism to 3%?
Yeah, it wasn't much. I mean, I will say, but it was like 3 or 4%, something like that. And if you just Google like CDC whistleblower, there are people reporting it, but obviously mainstream media won't touch it. You know, what a surprise. And you know, there's people like Red Ice Radio and James Corbett and other people who've talked about it. And and John Rappaport was one of the journalists, freelance journalists and reporters who've been going around talking about it. But it's out there. It's not just a conspiracy theory. It's not just, you know, it's out there, and the evidence is there that there is a link to it. And, you know, and again, the other thing too that they don't tell you about is the fact that there's a vaccine court. There's a court for vaccine cases. So, and everything that happens in there, it's secretive, and you don't know what happened. You don't know. But one thing that is public, and they do know, is that some families have won cases and they don't know how much money or whatever, but they have been awarded money. So that's telling me that something's wrong, and somebody's getting money for a reason. And I mean, you just look at like late night TV, when you're watching late night TV and you see like, oh, did you take this drug? Did a loved one die because they took this drug, or do you have these side effects because of this drug? Call this law office and we'll sue them for, some money. Well, what happened that drug was FDA approved, put on the market, and somebody said it was okay to take, and now there's commercials saying that there's all these side effects and it could lead to death, and I'll come to our law office and we'll help you sue them for some money. I mean, it obviously the whole thing is kind of tainted, and I think this goes back to like the idea of, that's the crazy thing about conspiracies, is that there's so much truth to a lot of them. I got into conspiracies because I loved looking back. I mean, I did awful in high school, and I didn't do good in history, and I didn't do good in English. I didn't do good in school in general. And then conspiracies really got me intrigued with history, because there's so many links to, you look at like reading about the Federal Reserve and Jekyll Island, or reading about the Iran-Contras or false flag events. And it got me really into history again. And one thing you realize, that a lot of conspiracy theories, there's hints of truth in a lot of it. But it seems like if it's a conspiracy theory happened a long time ago, it's okay and we accept it and it's more believable. But if it happens today, while it's happening, people just dismiss it. And so it's just, how did you get in conspiracy theories? What attracted you to it? Was there a documentary, a book, a journalist, a website, something that really got you, exposed to it and made you start to rethink, reality and the world we live in?
Well, when I was 11, when I found out that there was more than one religion, I thought everybody was Catholic. I knew once I found out there was Jews and Muslims, I just figured, oh shit, how do we know we're right? Wait a minute, there's more Muslims than Catholics? Wait a minute. Then real quick, I just began to think that, oh, we're just born, and I'm Catholic because I was born into it. Doesn't mean it's right. And Muslims were probably born into it too, and so are Jewish people, right? So then I thought, okay, it's all bullshit. And I became an atheist as a teenager. And my first indication is there was something really wrong with government and corporations. Probably wasn't until I turned 24, 25. I met a guy named John Van Horst, real super smart guy. He was about maybe 10 years older than me. He was in his 30s, and I met him in jiu-jitsu. Super brilliant, smart motherfucker. I still know him. Really, really, really genius, smart. He started explaining to me in jiu-jitsu how big pharma works, and in regards to trying to make vitamins only available through prescription. They've been trying to do that. They do it like every 15 years. They try to push it through, but it fails. Most people don't even know about it, but the pharmaceutical industry, which won't claim that vitamins work, they won't claim it. FDA won't claim it. They won't look at it. They don't acknowledge vitamins and minerals. Like every vitamin and mineral bottle has to say the FDA doesn't fucking acknowledge any of this shit. This shit doesn't do anything. You know, they got to say that, or the FDA, or the FDA comes down on them. So, and at the same time, they're trying to create nutraceuticals, and they're trying to make nutrients, vitamins and minerals, available only through prescription. To me, that's a racket. And it's obvious. I mean, how many fucking red flags do you need to see? That there's something wrong there. And it makes sense. It's all about money. It makes sense. Why would they want to blow up vitamins when they make way more money on putting you on medication? Vitamins will fuck them. They can't patent vitamins. But then what do they do? Then these big pharmaceutical companies, they make vitamins themselves and make it really shitty so it doesn't work and make it really cheap. So you get those people who just get turned on to vitamins and really think all vitamins are equal and all vitamin C's are equal and all vitamin E's are equal. They just go to the store and buy the big bottles for real cheap. $3.99 for fucking 1,000 caps. Fuck yeah. And it's a trick. So they think they're getting better. They're eating garbage vitamins, and they end up in line at the pharmacy anyways. So once I was aware of that, then I just basically had the mindset that everything that I was taught growing up in school had to be some sort of exaggeration or just complete bullshit, and it had to, once you start figuring out that history is written by winners, and every country's got their own unique version of history and what happened to their country and when they gained independence or whatever. It's all just propaganda. And so once you learn that the CIA was created just to protect wealthy families, and once you find out how evil the criminal element of the CIA is, and it's like, I think it's so obvious, and it's not even obvious, it's just a fact that the CIA invades countries, takes their drugs, sells both sides arms, creates Al-Qaeda, creates ISIS, creates rebels in Nicaragua, creates rebels everywhere, creates these people, and then names them. And just once you realize how evil the CIA is and what it's really for, and then you find out that the CIA has an operation called Operation Mockingbird, and the whole operation is to use all those billions of dollars that they make in selling arms and drugs, use all that to start buying up TV stations and buying up the media and inserting as many CIA journalists into media, actors, musicians. This is a real, just Google Operation Mockingbird.
Yeah, I know.
They thought, what a good idea, and they're smart. I would have thought of that idea too. If I was evil and I was one of the top CIA agents, I would think that was fucking brilliant. I'd be like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? It's a brilliant idea. We take over the media. Why the fuck not? Let's just start. And once you find that out, then basically everything that you see on TV, not everything. It's like, every TV show isn't somehow financed by the CIA. It isn't. Anybody can make TV. But when the global elite need to push their agenda, they do create shows, and they do put them on. And you still get to see the shit that has nothing to do with Agenda 21 or conspiracy theories, but they will put their shows in. They will, and it's easy to spot. It's from any show that appears to be about conspiracy theories, but then when you watch it, it proves the conspiracy theory is wrong. CIA, obvious, super obvious. And anything you see on the news anything except for like local news. Sometimes truth gets through, and a lot of truth gets through. You know, people get murdered. They show it on TV. Someone brutal car wreck. They show it on TV. A baby was found in a dumpster. That'll make the news. But when they need to get some shit across, they put it. They know how to. They have the power to put it right out, especially the national news, CNN and Fox. That shit. Any headline that you read, when that TV is on, the big screen at the gym or at a fucking bar, and you see a headline, every time I see the headline, I read it as if, like, this definitely is to help push their agenda. And then I just try to figure it out. They would not put a headline on CNN real big if it wasn't. It was like, it would be like, man. It's a super crazy high bias TV show. Like if, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so,
well, they're doing it now with you see with House of Cards, and you see it with some I forget some of the new movies I've seen that come out on Netflix and on the in the theaters that they kind of are making all the bad guys Russian, you know, so they're doing the Russian propaganda thing, making all, you know, the American, and which they did with Rocky.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, there could be movies just based on, hey, that's what's hot, we'll make them Russian. That's formula, that's hot. Has nothing to do with, there's no executive producers have ties to the CIA or the mob or anything. But for damn sure, some of them are. And it's for me, fascinating to try to figure out which stars were propped up and supported and backed by the CIA. Like, which ones? I would love to fucking know. Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah, that's.
Some of them might not even know that they got all the breaks and it was all planned. Maybe some stars don't even know. It would probably be best if they didn't know. And the stars that would blow up, I would have a lot of. I would say they would have to have a lot of dirt, just like presidents. Like presidents are like movie stars and rock stars to anybody with that kind of power, CIA, whatever you want to call it. You don't want to put a president into office unless he's got some serious dirt. Otherwise, that guy might try to be a hero. So we got to make sure he's hero-proof. And you got to have some murders on, on your hands. That's kind of good. Like Clinton was a huge example of that. And Lyndon B. Johnson. They were both fucking criminals. Yeah, they crazy were. Criminals.
Yeah.
And then Gerald Ford did criminal shit on the Warren Commission. So I'm sure he did more shit. I'm sure Gerald Ford has some serious fucking skeletons. They could trust them. They could trust, like, you ain't gonna say fucking shit. Shut the fuck up. Like Clinton, and for sure, Hillary Clinton's going to be the next president. So goddamn sure, I'll bet everything I have that she's the president. Fuck yeah. You see that shit coming a mile away. She's perfect. Perfect. She's a chick, and she's a total criminal. She's perfect. They got her by the goddamn balls, and she loves it. She loves being a criminal.
Yeah,
that's a dark pitch right there.
Yeah, people need to check out the Meta Connection or the Clinton Chronicles. And I just had Freeway Rick Ross on a couple episodes back, and yeah, we talked about that, like the Nicaraguan thing, and then also how the drugs were coming in to Meta, Arkansas, and all that stuff. And yeah, it's that's the Clintons have done a great job of keeping their name squeaky clean and their past in the past. Like everybody thinks of Clinton and they think about how good the economy was when he was in office and how he was a likable dude for the minorities and all this other stuff. But a lot of people don't. They forget about that other stuff, and they forget about him doing trades with China and that stuff and the trade agreement with China and all that. I think there's a movie called Death by China, a documentary on Netflix, which is really good, which goes into that. And yeah, and you're right about the films too. Like there are some things that is just coincidence. I had Sean Stone on, which you also had on your podcast, and I remember talking to Sean about that and how people people do these Illuminati videos and they say that, oh, this is a hint that that this was coming, and look at the link to the Freemasons or whatever. And he said, he made a good point. He's like, some of his movies, his father's movies, there's things in there which were completely coincidental, or somebody could have easily read into more than it really was and thought that it was, a bigger picture when really it wasn't anything. So I can definitely see how, that's the thing about conspiracies, is that you can go too far over the edge and then think everything is a conspiracy. And then what happens is that that's why I like to focus on the real conspiracies, the real things that are happening, and not like reptilians or anything that might seem absolutely insane and without very little proof, because I think there's so many conspiracies that there are proof and there is things out there, obviously the JFK assassination, which is really big, 9/11, the Iran-Contras. I mean, you look at us, funding rebels, like you said, in Central America and South America. There's a great documentary called War on Democracy, which really breaks down all the rebel we use communism. We had to take over these countries because we're worried about communism. They use the communist scare tactic to get us to justify invading these countries and taking down democratically elected politicians and presidents and prime ministers, and that's insane. I mean, we really have to think about it. And like, imagine if somebody did that to us. Imagine if another country came to our country and funded rebels to take down our country and our president. And I believe there was one time, I don't know if you're familiar with War is a Racket by Smedley Butler, but he tells a story of FDR and how a bunch of rich corporate guys went to Smedley Butler to help start a group to get together a group to take down the government with the military, and this stuff happens, and this stuff is not just conspiracy. But it's funny how when we talk about these things, like you could talk about the Iran-Contras, you can talk about the first democratically elected president of Iran, how the U.S. Funded the rebels to take him down, and you look at what we did in Guatemala with what the United Fruit Company did and all that stuff. And we can talk about all that stuff, Project Northwoods and Gulf of Tonkin, and people are like, oh yeah, that happened. But then you talk about 9/11, and that's like, oh no, that's bullshit, and it's like, wait, well, because it happened recently. I think some of it has to do with people are so emotionally attached to current events and things that happened recently that you're in denial. It's hard for you to believe that people are that corrupt, that evil, that people's lives are that meaningless to these rich and powerful people. But it's like if you start off from the beginning of history, history's full of conspiracies and history's full of corruption. So it's just it definitely seems like some of the current ones, like most recently 9/11 is like some people just can't grasp that there's some fuckery there, and to use Joe Rogan's word, fuckery, that there's some fuckery there, and that it is. There's more than meets the eye, and there obviously was some shit that was happening that wasn't legit, and the official story was bullshit. Just like like you said, the Warren Commission was bullshit. When Alan Dulles, who got fired by JFK, is now on the Warren Commission and stuff like that, which is just a pretty clear evidence that there was some bullshit going on. So yeah, I mean, do you have an issue with that? You talk to friends about conspiracy theories, and do they, you have a lot of friends that just automatically will just be like, oh, that's crazy. And you get linked in with like the reptilians, type people, and just think that, you're insane and none of it's real.
Do you believe in UFOs?
Yeah, I have a hard time not believing in UFOs. I think that it's...
Okay. No, that's I believe in UFOs. Do you believe that there's a possibility that they've been here a bunch and they may be here now? I mean, there's a possibility. We just can't see it. I mean, we don't have a camera that can videotape anything over 100 feet. It all looks like little balls. It's hard to get clear video footage of all these sightings. You know what I mean? We don't have a camera that can videotape anything, that close and clear. But
the Phoenix Lights was one that was quite obvious something, and like that's one that it wasn't just one person who filmed it on, you know, a shitty camera. I mean, you had all of Phoenix, you know, seeing these lights over Phoenix, and you know, and until today, there still isn't an explanation to it. So I definitely
if you found out, if you saw a picture of these motherfuckers that have been flying around that we can't really get good footage of, so many cases, and you found out, and you looked at the picture, and the alien, you saw a close-up picture of the alien, and it looked sort of like a reptile. Would that be shocking, or would you go, shit, that's an alien? That's what they probably look like.
Well, this is my thing with the reptilian thing, is that, like yourself, you probably have seen so many documentaries like I have, and I've had so many people on this show and talked about so many topics of things that, you know, probably 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I would say that's complete bullshit and there's no way it's happening. You know, things that Alex Jones were screaming about in the 90s and early 2000s happen to be true now. So like a lot of things that seem crazy at one point, later in life you end up being like, holy shit, I thought that was crazy, but it's real. So there's very little that will surprise me. But my thing with the reptilians thing is that I feel like, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I feel like if we focus so much on these things that we can't truly prove, that it kind of takes focus away from the things that, like, I think it's easier to get people to open their eyes and I guess, for lack of a better term, be enlightened or awakened to reality if we get them to focus on the things that we know, that we have a lot more proof for. You know, do you think that?
Well, I don't really spend a lot of time watching UFO and alien stuff at all anymore. I used to, but I do focus more on U.S. history, the last 100 years, especially. I only went back as far as JFK over the last few years. So much to learn, so many levels of understanding what could have went down. You know, but recently I went back to World War I a little bit and started getting a documentary called JFK to 9/11. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of crazy stuff in there.
I've seen JFK. It. Yeah.
Every JFK expert's got. No one knows exactly what happened. Nobody has any fucking idea what exactly happened. There's a lot of. Everyone has a different book on what happened. Everyone's an expert on how many shooters there were. Where did the fatal headshot come from? Was it the grassy knoll? Was it a storm drain? Was it? Did it come from the school depository? And maybe, who knows? Some people think 8 shooters. Some people think 3 shooters, 5 shooters. Some people have interviewed, the cast is so big, some people have interviewed, the wife and the daughter of the coroner for JFK's body and what happened there. And when you get their story, you're like, oh, shit. Something went down. You know, there's an interview with the wife and the daughter. It's on video. It's on YouTube. You're talking about, you know, after it happened, he rushed home. He was fucking freaking out, saying, "We got to get out of here." He grabbed his daughter and his wife. He was freaking out, sweating, and he wouldn't tell them what happened. And they knew he had something to do with the body. But they didn't know what. Of course, he didn't tell them. He just was freaking the fuck out, and that's what they're saying. They're like, they grabbed all their shit. They had to skip town. They were at a hotel, and live on TV, Lee Harvey Oswald gets shot and killed by Jack Ruby from the mob, and right in front of all these cops at the police station. And right when that happened, the mother and the daughter both said, all of a sudden, it was like the weight of the world was lifted off him. His face looked so happy. Turned off the TV and says, "We don't have to worry about anything anymore. Let's get out of here." And they went back home. And the wife, and then you go back into why was he freaking out? And there's when you look at what happened to the bodies and the autopsy and what the body looked like before, the body switching and crazy shit. CIA is really, really into body switching. And there was crazy shit, man. Crazy shit. That officer kid that got shot two people got shot. JFK got shot, and Officer Tibbet hours later, like down some street in the head. And it just so happens that, and remember, the CIA admits Frank Sturgis is a CIA agent, one of the killers from Operation 40. He's on video talking about how switching bodies is something the CIA is into. It's just covering the trails. But anyways, that Officer Tibbet, they're claiming that Lee Harvey Oswald shot him too. But it turns out that guy's nickname is JFK because he looks exactly like JFK. And so there's guys, everyone's got different theories, man. Some JFK experts will say that theory is nuts and it makes the air theory look bad, but I like listening to all the theories. And there's theories out there in those JFK CIA sponsored documentaries where it starts off like a JFK conspiracy, but then they prove to you with cartoon images how that it really was Lee Harvey Oswald. It's crazy. I love those. They're always on Discovery Channel. Any conspiracy theory on National Geographic or Discovery, for sure. That's where the CIA has all their connections. Easy. They can get their shows on really quick and nice and easy, whatever time slot they want. And when they don't have anything to show, then you just watch bear documentaries and insect documentaries.
Yeah.
But,
well, you look at...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, if you look at mainstream media, you look at Amber Lyons, who you had on your show, she worked for CNN. For people who don't know her story, just look into her and how she worked for CNN. They wouldn't televise her documentary that she went to Bahrain to get information for and all this stuff. And that's just one of many stories of mainstream media censoring people, of mainstream media. And I know, it sounds like everybody in the alternative media world calling it, oh, mainstream media is bullshit. But you got to look at it when it's funded by corporations and they're good, they care about ratings and they care about keeping those corporations happy. And a lot of those corporations are for military corporations that are for war and continuous war, and that's how they keep making money. So it just, like most things, you follow the money and you realize that, it's really the end all be all. It's like, it's one of those things, and this goes back to having a child here, and I remember holding my son for the first time and just thinking, like, how can everything else in life seem so meaningless and so pointless, power, corruption, and all that stuff. And it's amazing that there are parents like yourself and me who have that type of experience, and then there's other people who have kids and it has zero effect on them. And it is kind of weird that the extremes of the two.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, what's your favorite what's your favorite conspiracy? Like, is there one that you love researching? And I know you talked about World War I. I kind of recently got back into World War I because with all the Muslim talk and Middle Eastern talk and Islam talk, and I had like CJ Werleman on not too long ago, and I love talking about Middle Eastern history because the fall of the Ottoman Empire and all, how the West influenced the borders of the Middle East and all that stuff. Like, a lot of people don't realize a lot of the issues that we have today in the Middle East are because of Western influence.
Yeah, check out JFK to 9/11. It's a 3.5-hour documentary. A lot of crazy wild shit in there. And
yeah,
who knows what's true and what's not, but there's definitely a lot of truth in it based on what I've known, and it's really, really interesting, man. It gets into World War One, before World War One, after World War One, before World War Two. Nice and quick and easy. It shows you that
yeah,
the Nazis were financed by American industry. It's crazy. It's like we backed them, and we were totally down for Hitler for a while, and then until he invaded Poland and he started just getting crazy and looking really bad. Then we had to turn our backs on him. But the United States and the UK backed Hitler. They put him on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah. And Prescott Bush he worked for a bank in New York that got shut down by
Union Bank.
Yeah, Union Bank, which he got shut down by Trading with the Enemy Act. And so, that's another thing that people don't realize. Like, that's not a conspiracy theory. They literally got shut down for, giving loans and money to the Nazis. So, that's the thing about these big corporate guys and these guys who only care about money and power and these bloodlines is that they don't care about ideology. They don't care about political party. They don't care about, and that's the thing. They act like, they care about Democrats and Republicans and ideologies and all that stuff, but none of that means anything. It's all those in power. The most important goal of theirs is to stay in power. I mean, it's just like the Roman Empire, any empire, any king and queen, any monarchy, they want to stay in power. That's their goal, and they'll do whatever it takes. And it doesn't matter who they give money to or who they, do backdoor deals with or are friends with, none of that means anything. So it just, you look at history and really you learn a lot. And I had, I don't know if you're familiar with the band 1 Minute Silence, but they're kind of like a Rage Against the Machine band, like similar type of style from Ireland. I was really into them in like the new metal scene when Spine Chink was getting big and Ultra Spank and Machine Head and all those artists. They were just a really like political band. And I had the singer on not that long ago, and he was saying how reading history is just like it's the same thing over and over again. It's different characters, and I was saying, I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's like it's the same story but different characters. And you look at like history, it's just constantly the technology might change. Our phones, the way we communicate, our cars, but we still have the same human tendencies. We still make the same mistakes. There's still corruption. There's still people striving to be on top and to stay on top. So, you like you said, you look at history and you realize like not much has changed. It's just that's things surrounding us, technology and stuff like that.
And, man, the founding of this goddamn country is just, when you think about it, really, I guess you could say the same thing for the entire Western Hemisphere. It's so new, and I mean, this country was founded on anti-tyranny principles, and England, they were locked up. You go to England now, I mean, they got guns so out of their system, the cops don't even need fucking guns. And CCTV, that shit is just like, it's like Facebook. Everybody knows about it. Everybody knows that everywhere you go, you're on fucking camera. Everywhere you go, you're being filmed. They just follow you around. The government should sell mixtapes. You just fucking all over the place. You know what I mean? That by now they should have like face recognition where they can track you in a second and make little mixtapes of your day and make a little documentary on you really quick. You just make your own little documentary. Like, England's so deep. It's so deep. They never had a chance to restart. The people who founded this country had a chance to restart and put some laws in and make the Constitution to make sure that shit doesn't happen again. But corruption will always win, and that's what's going on right now. And the wealthy and the powerful, they want to keep their wealth. And in this documentary, JFK to 9/11, they talk about how the conspiracy theory in this one is that the reason why we hate communism so much is because the communism kills the wealthy. And it helps the poor, kills the wealthy. So the wealthy have all the power. They own the media. So let's make communism look fucking evil so that we'll always stay wealthy. Because when Russia became communist, according to this documentary, I got to look into it more, I don't know. But when Russia became communist, they brutally murdered like the royal family and just anybody that was rich. Same thing in Cuba when Fidel Castro took over. The rich people fucking fled. The poor people were in heaven because now they got something. They got free medical and free. On paper, communism sounds awesome, but like all forms of government, corruption will eat all of those alive. Communism, democracy, capitalism, there's always going to be a fall. And so a lot of countries already hit that fall and just will never recover, and they're just a third world country. And it's fucked. It's gone. So according to this documentary, that Hitler was financed because Hitler didn't like the Russians, and in a fascist state, the wealthy thrive. They're not going nowhere. So Hitler was fascist, so they backed and supported him, and they were hoping that he would invade Russia and kill communism, just to make sure that they protected their wealth. And according to the documentary, and I really don't know how it went down, but that's what he's saying, it went down, and that's what it's been ever since. It's made communism look evil. Communism is fucking evil. When on paper, communism means everyone gets taken care of, nobody's rich, we all pitch in and we all work together. You know that's not going to work, but it sounds very utopian.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of on board with the idea that, I mean, well, I wouldn't say on board, but I think the alternative ideas like the Zeitgeist, ideas, I had Ben McLeish on from the Zeitgeist movement, and I think these alternative ways of thinking are important. I think that we kind of got brought up that this is the only way we can have an economy is this capitalistic economy, and we have to have currency this certain way, and we have to, and it's like this whole nurture versus nature thing. Like, we were brought up, nurtured into believing that this is the only way you can have a society, and I tend to believe that it is possible that and obviously, like you said, the powerful won't let it happen. But I forget what country it was, if it was Sweden or what country was that they were thinking about having a minimum wage for everybody, where everybody would make. I'm just throwing out a number out here, like $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and it'd be just enough money to survive. And then if you wanted to make more money, you could work and do all this stuff to have a nicer car, nicer house, and more food and all this stuff. And you think about it, and you're like, well, look at crime, for example. Most crime comes from people who don't have things, who are struggling, who need food, and nobody's gonna rob somebody for no reason. Most of the time they're gonna rob you because they're addicted to pills, or they're they need money for to eat or whatever. So just this idea that maybe if everybody was had enough money to survive, crime would diminish, at least would diminish a lot, and people would still be motivated to do stuff. Because I do this podcast for free. It's obviously awful investment because I make zero money doing it, and I spend a lot of my time, I work a full-time job and do this just because of the love of trying to spark conversation and bring interesting people, and trying to, I guess, leave the world a better place than I got it, and try to feel good about doing my part in doing that. And it just, so it's one of those things where I think people are still motivated, even if they, they don't need money to be motivated. I think that this idea that you need money to motivate people is bullshit. I think people are motivated by their passion. You're one of the busiest dudes I know. You're constantly, that's why I appreciate you coming on the show so much, because I know you're always traveling to your different jiu-jitsu schools. You're doing your own podcast. You do Joe Rogan's podcast. You do, you're constantly training and busy, and so, but you do a lot of it. I'm sure you're motivated by your passion for doing this stuff, and obviously money is a great incentive, or another incentive, just another also incentive on top of your passion, but it's not your primary incentive. And I think that, unfortunately, the rich and powerful want us to believe that you need to have these money, money needs to basically be the root of everything and the foundation of a society, because that's what motivates people. And I just don't agree on that. What's your opinion on like these alternative possible societies, like these possibly everybody having a minimum wage, or a Zeitgeist thing, or Venus Project, where you use science and people really don't need materialistic stuff? The only reason we need materialistic stuff is because we've been brainwashed to believe we need this stuff. And what's your opinions on that stuff?
I think we had it right in this country in the beginning. I think we should start over and try to do it again, but make the Constitution and the checks and balances, and now that we know how the wealthy can influence laws, we got to make laws that we got to have some kind of part of the government that is completely untouchable, and they make sure everything's kosher or something. We almost had it right. It lasted, 300 years or something like that? How long has it been? Something like that? 200 years, 300 years? I don't know. And now it's falling to shit. It needs an overhaul, and we need to make some tweaks and adjustments. I don't think we'll ever we just can't go to communism. We're just not used to it. It's just not going to happen. Maybe, for something like that to happen, we'd have to have a major catastrophe, whether natural or man-made, something like that, where we have no choice. We are starting over. We have nothing. Now, how are we doing it? We're going to go the communist way. What are we going to do? I don't know. I don't know. I just think we should just keep talking about it, and little by little, people will, little by little, once the old people die, the younger people will be smarter and make better decisions. And, maybe it's just a part of the Earth's history where the downslide, It's all about frequency. Right now we're going down, but eventually we'll go back up again. Just like our own personal history. It's just ups and downs, ups and downs.
Well,
if it was always up, it would always be down.
Well, yeah, you definitely need I just had Daniele Bagnelli on, which obviously Daniele Bagnelli. I had him on not too long ago, and it's so important. You need that yin yang, because you almost need the negative to appreciate the positive, and maybe there's some truth to that, the Earth regulating itself. And but I also think you're right. I agree with you that the fact that I think that we haven't given what the founding fathers their perspective and what they wanted the country to be. We haven't given that a fair shot, because it obviously did get polluted and corrupted. And maybe if things were done the way they should have been done, and there weren't people who found ways to put loopholes and stuff, and found ways to interpret laws and constitutional things different ways, so then they could get what they want. If there wasn't that, maybe things would work out. If we just followed the Constitution and we just let people have freedoms and I'm very much a libertarian when it comes down to that, because I agree with guys like Ron Paul and other libertarians and think that I agree with a lot of the opinions of people should have freedom of choice and freedom of making bad decisions. And you live and you learn, and when you make those bad decisions, I mean, you can only learn from mistakes if you make them, and I don't think you can put just restrictions on everything, like New York when they wanted to outlaw big sodas, or they want to force you to wear a seatbelt and all this stuff. It's like it's a downward spiral of you keep taking people's rights away. And it's like that quote, when you sacrifice freedoms for security, you gain neither and lose both. Or I probably fucked up the quote, but it was something along those lines. So I think that's important. We it is a downward spiral, and so it's interesting. It's definitely one of those things where I think there's probably some truth to the fact that we probably haven't given the founding fathers' ideas a fair shot, because it did get polluted and it did get ruined by corrupted people. And maybe if we did follow their ideas and the way they wanted the law of the land to be, maybe it would work out, and maybe we would have a better system. But obviously right now it's just a downward spiral to nowhere, and I definitely am a little worried that we're going to have a economical collapse eventually, and we're leading to I know like Rogan likes to be very positive, and some people like to be glass half full, but I think we're losing privacy, which is important, and we're losing the middle class, which keeps everybody going, and so I don't know. I mean, the future seems a little scary.
Yeah, man, they sure do. Hey, I got to teach class now, man. I'm gonna have to let you go. You wanna continue this another time? Where are you calling from? What?
I'm calling from I'm from Massachusetts, so
shit, it's late up there. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we could continue this next Monday at the same time, or Tuesday. We'll talk about EDI. We'll talk about music, and
I'd love to.
Yeah. Cool?
Yeah,
cool.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. I'll email you or throw you a text message and contact you over the weekend and just set something up for Monday and Tuesday, and we'll do a little talking. We'll do a little bit more talking.
Okay, cool, man.
Thanks, Eddie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, dude.
Thank you. Bye.
Believe in the ripple effect.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear
I'm
me?
here. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Everything's good.
Awesome. Thanks for being with me again, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thank you.
Thanks. It's awesome to be able to talk to you for a little longer because there's just so many things. I mean, last show we did like an hour show just on conspiracies, which we probably could do even more hours than that. But it would be fun to talk about music and some martial arts and a bunch of other stuff. Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was I know obviously you're a big a marijuana advocate, which I am too. Even though I don't even smoke weed, I think that it's ridiculous that it can help so many people, and yet it's it's prevented from the ability for people to get it to help diseases and stuff like that. And I've had Adam Scorgi on and stuff like that, and it's cool to be somebody who doesn't smoke weed and be an advocate for it because people don't think I have the incentive of trying to legalize it or wanting it legalized just for the benefit of me smoking it. I really truly believe that people should have the right to pursue happiness, and if their happiness is to smoke weed, then they should do it, especially when it's one of our first American flag was made out of weed and all that other stuff. Henry Ford's fenders, on his first production car was made out of hemp and all that stuff, and it's a magical plant. So how did that affect your music and jiu-jitsu? Has it? I'm sure it had some effect on your music, but has it also had some effect on your jiu-jitsu? Because obviously you're a master and you're really good at it. And has it helped with your ability to be creative with it or anything like that?
I think all marijuana does is when it comes to creativity or really any emotions or anything, it really just makes you more of what you are. I've said that a million times, and I guess I'll keep saying it, but it doesn't make you happy, or it doesn't make you feel good, or it doesn't make you paranoid. It just makes you more of what you already are. That's why it could be black magic or white magic. If you're a sketchy person and you got a lot of crazy diabolical shit in your head, you're gonna smoke weed, and it's gonna make you think about what you're doing and analyze it, and you might not like it, and it might freak you the fuck out. So I don't recommend smoking weed when you're going to do anything that's going to make you nervous. It'll make you more nervous. I recommend smoking it when you're going to do something you're very confident at and you love doing. Then it's going to make it wonderful and even better. As far as creativity goes, if you're a creative person, it's going to make you more creative. It's not going to make someone who's not creative. You got to already be creative. And if you have a mind that is constantly breaking things down and tearing things apart and putting them back together, you're going to do that even more. And you're going to break it down even more. And that's what it did for my jiu-jitsu. I'm already a guy who just breaks everything down and analyzes things. In music, that's what I do. I arrange music, and when you arrange songs and put them together, you have to know every millisecond of that song and what needs to be going on in that millisecond, and you have to understand exactly what songwriters are thinking when they're arranging and putting together songs. They're not just jamming random chords. Everything is there's structure to everything, and everything must be in a certain key. There are laws, but then you stay within the laws, but then you're free to do whatever your mind wants to do. So, anyways, emotionally, that's another level of creative. The creative thought process is emotions influence that a lot. So when you're creating music, emotion is so crucial. It's not like putting together a piece of furniture. It is in some ways. You are putting together something in your own unique way, but music has another dimension, and that's the emotion. So weed affects your emotion. So if you're emotional in any way, whether it's fear or love, weed is going to make you feel more fear or more love. So fear, it can play a big part in music, especially if you're into Morbid Angel and all that death metal shit. Fear is the main component. And you have to make music that sounds scary. It has to invoke fear. It invokes feelings to be feared. So,
Yeah, I've heard you talk about music, and one thing, it's funny because your mind, like you said, your mind kind of works. You already have that type of mind that breaks things down, and when I hear you talk about music, you can definitely tell that you would probably look at jiu-jitsu and music as the same way, as you really break it down to the science of it, and there is a science to it. And the thing about music and jiu-jitsu, from the outside looking in, I know I get buddies together at my house for UFC fights, and a lot of times guys who aren't huge fans of the fights but will just come to hang out, sometimes when they're on the ground they're like, oh my god, stand these guys up, and I'll try to explain to them, like, listen, there's a lot of shit going on that you're not picking up on, and just like any sport, the more you understand of it, the more you're gonna like it, the more you understand the strategy and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to get you to react a certain way or whatever. And it really is chess, and I think as people understand it more, they appreciate it a lot more. And I think music's the same thing. Like, to the average listener, you're just hearing music and you're hearing melodies, but to somebody who can really break it down, like, okay, this is, they're doing just a typical verse, chorus, verse, bridge, breakdown, whatever, or they're using this type of same type of songwriting and all that stuff, and really so it is the same type of idea, the whole breaking down. And I know there's people like Graham Hancock, who said that he got really like paranoid and stuff like that after a long time of smoking weed. And do you think that was something internal that it just brought out, or you don't think that it was directly because of the smoking weed?
I think it's because he smokes way too much weed.
He did smoke a lot, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't smoke that much, man. I take a little puff here and there. Some days I don't smoke weed all day, and then maybe I'll smoke some at night. There's a lot of days like that where I just smoke weed right now. It's nighttime. It's 8 o'clock. I just took one hit, first time all day. So I don't smoke weed as much as people might think. I think I smoke weed too much, to tell you the truth. When you think about what Terrence McKenna says you should only smoke weed once a week, so you really appreciate it. So, man, I'm like, damn, you would really appreciate it if you smoked it once a week. I think maybe you shouldn't smoke it every day. And Graham Hancock he was one of those guys that just wakes up in the morning and smokes weed, and then smokes weed throughout the whole day and just hitting bongs and just whipping his brain apart. Ayahuasca is probably one of the most beautiful, important, magical, godlike drinks you could ever put in your body. I believe that. Even though I've never done it, but I believe it. I've never done it, and I believe it. I would do it if I would have done it a million times already if I would have had it available. I just don't have it available at any time. There have been times where I could have done ayahuasca at a certain ceremony, but it's an underground ceremony on a Saturday that I was out of town. That's come up. I've had to turn it down at least 4 or 5 times. I would have done it. But my point is, you don't do that. You wouldn't drink ayahuasca 3 times a day every day. It's too much. So what happened to Graham Hancock was his body going, dude, slow the fuck down. You don't need to just stuff your blood with that shit all day. So that's what that is. You could definitely smoke too much.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because everything in life. I mean, you're an athlete, and I play sports too, and when you eat right and you're healthy, like that's when you really appreciate that cheat day. So it's like if you're cheating every single day, you don't appreciate it. It's the same thing with anything. I look forward, like usually my cheat day would be on a Friday night when I go out to dinner, and that's when I'm like, okay, I ate nothing but really clean and nothing but flavor all week, and then that Friday I'm super excited to have that meal because I didn't have it all week. So yeah, it makes absolutely sense. That yin yang thing in life where you kind of need a little bit of both. You know, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And with music, did you when you write music, when you produce music, do you ever smoke before that, or do you jam and smoke or anything like that? You see a help with the creativity or?
Well, absolutely. I would never work on music ever if I wasn't high, ever. I have to be. I think that for me to get the best results musically, I have to be stoned. The only time I wouldn't is if I was going to play a gig in front of 10,000 people, or in front of like important record industry people. I would not smoke weed because I didn't smoke weed. I mean, I smoke weed when I roll. I always smoke weed when I roll, but I didn't at Metamoris. That was going to be too much pressure, too much nerves. I didn't want to do that, and it worked out great. Like I was totally under control. But if I would have smoked weed, I probably would have had a panic attack. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to be smart about it. But when it comes to music, really, whether you're high or not, that isn't going to determine whether you write a great song or not. The weed isn't going to make you write a great fucking song. I truly believe the only way you're going to write a great song, or basically channel a great song, the only way you're going to channel that thing, because no one writes a great song. That shit just comes out when it comes to music. And if you really truly understand music, what makes a song great is the core melody. What's going on in the music? And the vocals are the music, the vocal melody, not the words, the vocal melody. If you don't understand the difference between the lyrics and the vocal melody, you don't know anything about music, and you shouldn't be talking about songwriting.
Yeah.
So to understand truly what songwriting is, that's the basics. You have to know the difference between the vocal melody and the lyrics. So the vocal melody is the music. So the most important part of a great song, the most important part, are the melodies and how they work together. People will confuse that and say, well, I like songs because of the lyrics. I don't care. The music is second. Lyrics. Those are people that they're not paying attention. They could be professional songwriters and music producers that could also think that. They could also think that. But generally, once you understand that the magic comes from the music, the lyrics, the actual words, that's icing on the cake. That's icing on the cake. If I will only listen to the lyrics, and most people the same way, they just don't understand what's going on with them. I will only listen to the lyrics and enjoy them if the vocal melody and the music's good. If the music's not good and the vocal melody is not good, it's hard to write a bad vocal melody when the music is great. So, what I'm saying is if the music isn't good, nobody's paying attention to the lyrics. If the music is great, then that means the vocal melody is great. People are going to love the song whether they know what the song is about or not. So this is really what I mean by all the lyrics and vocal melodies. People that say that they like songs because of the lyrics, that's true. But what they don't realize is the only reason they're listening to those lyrics is because the music is good. If the music sucked, they wouldn't like those lyrics. They wouldn't give a shit about the lyrics.
You're right.
They wouldn't, because look at most people. Like, if you take your average person, your average music fans of favorite songs, I bet 90% of them, they don't know what those songs are about. They don't. They may think they do. They don't. Like Smashing Pumpkins, for instance, I bring them up. Very vague and obscure lyrics most of the time. Let's take Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. No one really knows what that fucking song's about, yet it's one of the greatest songs of all time. If you took that song, this is what I tell people when I get in arguments about they think lyrics are the most important thing. They think that, and they truly believe that, but they just don't realize what's going on. They're giving those lyrics a chance because the music's good. If the music wasn't good, they wouldn't think that those lyrics were good. And so sometimes there's a song that's such outrageous lyrics, and it gets a big push by record labels because someone it's like a side project of some producer who has a lot of power, and they could just go ahead and throw songs on a nationwide playlist and have some wacky, crazy lyrics, and the song sucks, but the lyrics are outrageous. That happens every now and then. But those songs aren't going to be called classic unless it's saying super outrageous, funny shit that people just will never get tired of. But bottom line, Stairway to Heaven, what song do you think would be a bigger hit? If Stairway to Heaven, you keep the music the same, you keep the vocal melody the same, but you change the lyrics. And instead of calling it Stairway to Heaven, you called it Fairway 07. You called it Fairway 07. What song do you think would be bigger? The song that's the lyrics are different, but the vocal melodies and all the music's the same, or a totally different song, a totally different music, a totally different vocal melody, but the exact same lyrics? What song do you think would be bigger?
It's the one with the vocal melody. I mean, it's the the vocal melody. It's funny because I caught on to that at a young age. I remember I used to love poetry and I used to love music. And the one thing I used to love about both of them, they both affected you emotionally, but in two different ways. Poetry would affect you emotionally specifically because of the lyrics, because of the words, and and then music would affect you because of the feel of it, the way the melody. The melody. Yeah, and the crazy thing is, I would listen to songs that I absolutely loved. I felt like, oh, this song's so emotional, but I'm not picking up all the lyrics. Oh, let me read the lyrics. Then I read the lyrics, and the lyrics suck, and then it ruins the song for me. And I'm like, holy fuck! I thought it was just because the feeling of the song felt deeper than the actual lyrics were, and then it was kind of a disappointment after reading the lyrics.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but how about this? And you're crying on a Fairway 07. You know what I mean? If Robert Plant said that with the same music, that song would still be a giant hit.
Absolutely.
It would be a giant hit. Don't get me wrong. I love great lyrics. And great lyrics are important. They are. But it's icing on the cake. That's what it is. I'm not going to listen to the lyrics unless the music and the vocal melodies are good. And the bottom line is, think about your favorite songs out there. You don't know what they're about, so how are you telling me that the lyrics are the most important part of the song when you don't even know what your favorite songs are about? So there shouldn't be an argument, right?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, some of my favorite songs are. I mean, before I ever read the lyrics or really paid attention to the lyrics, it was the feeling of the song, the feeling of the melody that really like hit a nerve or made my, my hair stand. That really made me love the song before I even knew what and then you try to analyze the lyrics, you try to figure out what he was writing about. But before I even attempted to do that, it was the feeling of the song. I mean, I remember, As Lay Dying, Shadows and Security, that was an album where, he obviously does a lot of screaming. I can't understand a fucking word he says, but the guitar riffs and everything was so emotional and passionate that even without any vocals, the songs would just touch you in a way that you felt it. And, Under Oath, for what's that song called? For Whom It May Concern. That's another one that, like, if you took away the lyrics, you took away the vocals, just the feeling of the song, or if you took away the lyrics and you kept the melody, the feeling of the song would still hit you. And yeah, I mean, you're right, because I talk to a lot of people and they are confused. They think that it's the lyrics that they fall in love with, when a lot of times you could replace those lyrics and keep the same melody, same song, same music, and people would still love the song just as much, and
Exactly. And think about this. Here's a good example. In hip-hop, the general rule of thumb when remixing music is remix guaranteed hit. If it wasn't a hit in the 70s or 80s, why the fuck you going to remix it? That makes sense, I guess. If you're running a record label, I guess that makes sense. But for me, that's not what I like to do. I like to remix great songs that went under the radar and no one, they're super underground, but they're just as good as any of the greatest songs ever that got pushed. I collect songs like that. So I like to remix songs that people never heard of and try to revive it. That's what I usually do. If you look at all the songs that I remix, they're all obscure. They're all of them. But there have been a couple hip-hop songs out there, big ones, that were samples, but from obscure songs that weren't from an old James Brown record or old George Clinton or your classic bands that these hip-hop artists are sampling from, like old funk and old jazz and stuff like that. When you look at one of the greatest hip-hop songs of all time was by the Fugees, Ready or Not. Huge, monstrous, Ready or Not. Are you kidding me? That's a fucking amazing song. And most people would think, oh, those lyrics are the best. I love it because of the lyrics. And yes, the lyrics are great. It just so happens that you got great music, the vocal melody and the chorus is great, and the lyrics are great. But no one would give a fuck about those lyrics. If it was just a drum beat and one bass note just hitting over and over again, but the exact same lyrics, people wouldn't give a fuck about that song. What made that song huge is the sample. And that sample was from a super obscure Enya song. Enya, E-N-Y-A, super obscure Enya song. Whoever produced that thing loved Enya, listened to the song, and had vision. Man, I'm going to make this a hip-hop song. The furthest thing from hip-hop is Enya. Enya is like some mystical Sarah McLachlan, Sarah McLachlan is a commercial version of Enya. You know, Enya is like super spiritual, airy, mystical music and shit. And anyways, they sampled a little piece of her song. That song blew the fuck up. And it was because of that music, the melody that drives that song. It's way easier to writing vocal melodies to fantastic music. You could just do so many different combinations of vocal melodies, and everybody has a different version of a vocal melody over good music. Oh, you could just there's some songs out there, like right now Afterlife by Arcade Fire. Man, what a great song. It's just one it's just an amazing song, and they put so many different melodies and vocal melodies and musical melodies over this core melody, and man, it's amazing what you could do. Everyone could just riff on that core melody that is just holding it all together. But so that song was so good by the Fugees that at like 8 years later, some other R&B artist, not a hip hop group or a hip hop artist, but an R&B singer. I don't even know this fucking name, but he took the same music. Changed the drum beat up a little bit. Still hip hop because it's R&B, but it's a little different. The drum production was different, but it's still you could have rapped over it. But it wasn't rap. It was an R&B dude, like Keith Sweat type dude, sang over it, and it was a huge hit again. I forget the name of the song, but it was a hit. And of course it was, because it was Enya. Enya was the golden ingredient, and you think they were paying tribute to Enya, like, oh, we're gonna try to blow up Enya? No, that R&B artist thought he was sampling the Fugees until they realized, oh, that's not the Fugees. No, that's actually Enya. Oh shit, how do we get a hold of her to get rights to do that shit? I bet you that's how it went down. Or the same producer. It could have been the same producer. They just say, you know what? I'm going to use that same motherfucking song and make an R&B song out of it. You could do both. You can take an R&B song and make a hip-hop version out of it, or you could take a hip-hop song and make an R&B version out of it. You know, there's no laws. You can keep remixing to death. I bet. But anyways, when it comes to those golden melodies that resonate with the world, oh man, they're so simple, but the melodies, the way they intertwine and dance with each other, that's the magic right there. And I believe you could only conjure up that magic in the state of full appreciation. If you're not feeling appreciation, that's where it all comes from. That's my experience, because there is no other way to explain bands that wrote, like Metallica, for instance. They were on fire. They were writing great music. They did like 4 or 5 albums that were incredible, and now they can't write a great song to save their life. They write songs sound like Metallica, but they're missing the golden ingredient, the magic. And I think the only way you're going to get, and they're very similar, those magical intertwining melodies and those non-magical intertwining melodies. You could get them, they're really close, and they sound so close. And they're so simple, and why isn't this one magical? I'm trying to write magic, and it's very similar to that song, and why isn't it magical? And I truly believe 100% is you're not going to get those perfect, simple combinations. It sounds very similar to other songs, but it has its own unique magic, and I think you could only get that in the state of appreciation. I think when you're feeling appreciation for life, when you're actually feeling that, I believe that you're vibrating at a certain frequency, and I think that frequency, that appreciation frequency, connects you to the universe, and that's where you get those magical melodies. That's where you get them. You're not coming up with them on your own. If you're coming up with them on your own, then why is Motley Crue still writing great songs? Why do all these bands? There's a period where they write great songs and then they're gone. People say, oh, it's because of the pain. Now they're all rich and all happy, and now they don't have any pain to draw from. I think that's the complete opposite. I think that's total horseshit. I think they're not happy. I think if they really truly were appreciative and they were happy, so why coincidentally when bands are blowing up and they're like, for a while they're like, oh my God, we're blowing the fuck up. You get your first mansion, it's out of control. That's where all the great songs are coming from. You do your rock history. Do it. Metallica had a slow rise, so that's why they squeezed about 3-4 hours. They didn't do music videos. They were doing shit differently. How come other bands didn't have a bunch of albums like them? And most bands have one great album, and the second album is okay, maybe 2 good songs, and then they're done, son. It's over. But they don't come back from it. Metallica, it was a slow rise. It wasn't like an overnight success right to the arenas. It was a slow grind, so they appreciated a long, slow haul. So in that state of appreciation, they were vibrating at a certain rate that connected them to all those awesome golden melodies. And once they got rich and famous and they hated each other, talking shit on each other, they're super rich, they're getting divorces, they're miserable, they don't know what they want to do with their life, they can't find happiness. No fucking way are you going to have access to those golden melodies. No way. So what you're doing is you're writing like bad versions of Metallica, and like bad versions of yourself. And I think that's what happens with all bands. They don't stop writing hit songs because they start their skills that start eroding, like their physical skills. No, they're probably better than ever, and as a matter of fact, technically, and they just cannot intertwine those magical melodies anymore. And I truly believe, to have access to the magic of the universe, you have to appreciate your life like the real. And that's what I think happens. The same thing with psychics. I believe all those fake psychics you see, reading palms for $10, and then they try to bump you up to 40 and all that shit. I think those psychics they have connections and like psychic powers and all that when they were kids, but as soon as they started trying to make money off it, that means they stopped appreciating it and got greedy with it, and then they lost their psychic connections. But they're really good at faking like they still have it, but they really don't. They're just like memorizing horoscope books and all that kind of shit, but I believe they used to, because I don't believe those fake psychics. All of us one day, they say, you know what, I'm going to try to be a fake psychic. They were psychic when they were young, and they grew up and they just lost it. They lost the connection. They're like rock stars that lost the connection. They didn't lose their skills. They can't write like AC/DC. That new album that just came out, I heard that Rock or Bust song. My God, it's just it sounds exactly like AC/DC. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I just think that's my guess. What else could it be?
That's a super interesting perspective on it, because I've never really thought about it like that. How when a band first gets together, like the excitement of being happy, of trying to basically achieve your goal and chasing that dream, there is excitement to it. Like you finally you get signed, you finally start getting, you're playing shows and you get these fans and you're super excited. And then once you get rich and famous, when you think they're the happiest, it's usually when they're the least happiest, because usually it's when you get to your destination is when you realize that getting there wasn't really what you wanted. It's like that quote, satisfaction is the death of desire. Once you're satisfied, desire's gone. And it's one of those things. It kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, Metallica wanted to be the biggest metal band in the world. They were motivated to achieve that, and then once they got there, they realized, like, holy shit, now what? Now we're not happy. We don't have any other goals. We don't have any other things to achieve. And so I mean, it is interesting, because I never really thought about it like that. Bands like Depeche Mode and some of the other older artists that kind of, it seemed like when they went through their rough times in life, the drug addiction and the depression is when they're writing the best music. But in other cases like Metallica, you're absolutely right. It does seem like once you have it all, obviously your ability to write music shouldn't be gone. I mean, there's no reason why, if you could capture genius for one album or one song, 10 albums later, you should be able to do it again eventually, at least for one song, and they really haven't done it. So it is an interesting thing, because when people
and you don't know, like when you use Depeche Mode as an example, and I have too, is their best album, Ultra, was when they were at their most drugged out. But how do you know that they were drugged out and depressed? Maybe they were drugged out and they really appreciated life. That's where they were happy, and when they were doing the drugs, they were like, fuck, especially if they were doing ecstasy. Ecstasy makes you appreciate life like a motherfucker, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't that they were on drugs and depressed and writing music. Maybe they were on drugs and the drugs got them to appreciate life, but it still fucked them up physically. Physically, it fucked them up, and the come down from that is brutal. And maybe they weren't writing songs during the come down when they felt brutal, but then they would do drugs again. And then when you do heroin, I've never done it, but I hear it makes you feel like you're on ecstasy. So maybe that's what they mean, that they were writing great music because they were on drugs, feeling like they were on top of the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's it. It is. It's really interesting to look at it that way, because usually everybody just kind of says, yeah, it makes sense because the best music comes from pain, comes from heartbreak. And to think about it, we never look at it as, well, one common thing that we see, you look at the Wall Street guys committing suicide, you look at comedians and musicians and people committing suicide who seem like they have it all. Yeah, I mean, it's because having it all, I mean, you could be looking for happiness in the wrong places. And just because you have all these material things where, unfortunately, the way society's built, we're convinced that, happiness is dictated by how big your house is, or how attractive your wife is, or how much money you're making every year, or how nice of a suit you're wearing. Like, really, that's not happiness. And that's not going to fulfill you, and you're looking at the wrong places. That's why a lot of businessmen, really successful businessmen, are really angry and shameless and have psychopath and psychotic tendencies and can lie and cheat. I mean, a lot of them seem, if you look at financially, they should be the happiest people on earth. But I've met a lot of successful businessmen who are the most miserable fucks you ever meet, and I'm just like, I'd rather be me than them any day of the week.
Now, and also appreciation for what I meant by you only have access to those golden melodies of music in a state of appreciation. Now, don't get me wrong. Appreciation isn't always happiness. You could be totally miserable and be appreciative, because that's where I think people confuse heartache and you have to come from pain to write good music. I think it's the appreciation still, because when a girl breaks up with you, you really, really appreciate that girl more than ever right there, right? And when you're with her, before she broke up with you, you weren't appreciating her, and you had no idea she was about to break up with you because you didn't appreciate her. And all of a sudden she breaks up with you, she breaks your heart, you appreciate her more than ever. That's where the song comes from, appreciation. Like if something bad happens to you, like when Eric Clapton's son died, I mean, he wrote a great song from that. And I bet he didn't appreciate family more than that time right there. She appreciated family and the love he had for his son more than ever during that time. That was appreciation, but he wasn't happy, but he felt that appreciation. You know, he knew there was a loss. When you have a feeling of great loss, that means you appreciate what you just lost. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a great loss. So your level of appreciation is at all-time highs at your most tragic moments.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's weird because it's almost like it's a negative but positive feeling at the same way. Like it's kind of sad that you lost a loved one, but you're thinking about all the great times together and how much you appreciated them, and that's kind of could be influencing the music just as much as the sadness of losing them. Yeah, so that
appreciation comes from great loss or great gains. You know what I mean? So if you lost a family member, like all of a sudden in a tragic way, they were young, you appreciate them more than ever. That's from a great loss, you appreciate them. But if someone gave you a record deal and your $10 million as well, that's a great gain. You're going to appreciate that shit so fucking much. So either way, you're in a state of appreciation, great gain, great loss. I think you're in a state to channel great ideas, music, anything that you could channel from the Akashic records, that infinite river of knowledge that's all around us throughout the universe.
Well, I think marketing and TV and social media, I mean, they just constantly show us better looking people than we are, nicer, people who have nicer things than we have, and all these happy people. I think we spend so much time wanting things we don't have that we don't appreciate the things we do, and I think that's a big problem with society. I think that's some of lack of appreciation or depression or all that stuff is really just striving to get things you don't, you're almost chasing things that you don't have, and you don't spend enough time looking around and be like, well, there's definitely people out there who have it worse than me. There's always somebody out there who has it worse than me. That's why I always have like a super soft spot for any time I see somebody who lost a limb, or anybody who's in a wheelchair, or anybody who has a disabled loved one that they have to work with every day and help out. And it really puts things in perspective. Like, holy shit, like I am lucky enough to be able to just hop in my car and go to the gym, or hop in my car and go to work, or just wake up and being able to have the physical capabilities of doing the things I want to do. And even those simple things, I think when we wake up every day and we do have our health, and we do have our limbs, and we do have, things, we take all that stuff for granted. And I think that's the big issue.
Hey, I'm going to have to let you go again. I'm going to start teaching class now. We could do this again, man. We'll do a part 3. We'll do it tomorrow, same time. Send me a reminder text at 7. Tomorrow, same time.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thanks, Eddie. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you tomorrow, same time. I'll throw you a text at the same time, just remind you, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, dude. See ya.
Thanks, Eddie.
Bye.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. And ruthless conspiracy, intent to the new,
is O'Neill, IBM, and ITT, and AT&T, and DuPont, Dow, and Exxon. Those are the nations. The world is a college of corporations. The world is a business.
Good thing about having a child is that my sleeping habits are all messed up. So even though we're having this late conversation, it's you kind of lose track of time when you first have a kid.
Where are you at again?
I'm out of Massachusetts. I basically raised here. I was born in Portugal, but I was raised in Massachusetts and near like the Springfield area where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. And grew up here, and actually hometown of Gonzaga. Team Link is where he trained. Is right from my hometown, Ludlow. Smashing Pumpkins. Nice. There's a couple. When you're from a small town, anybody who kind of makes it out of this town, you kind of take a note on it. And like Stain's guitarist is from Ludlow. Who else? Smashing Pumpkins bassist, the female. The girl, she's from Ludlow. All that remains, like a bunch of those guys are from around here. Like Mike Martins was on my show. He's actually from my town, from Ludlow.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a small town, but it's one of those things when you're a small town. Anytime you get somebody who kind of makes it big, you kind of take a note of it and you kind of support those guys. So it's cool to kind of support All That Remains and Stained and all those guys growing up.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, man. So. You see that thing on recently on the 24-year-old NFL player who decided to retire because of concussions and stuff?
No, did that just happen today?
Yeah, it just started like kind of going around Sports Center and the news, making kind of mainstream media the last 24 hours to 48 hours, and I'll tell you, man, it's kind of an interesting conversation and topic to hit on because it's one of those things that I always think about it now, having a son. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, obviously you don't want to stop your son or any child from pursuing their happiness and doing what they love, but the concussion thing's a real thing. I mean, you look at, there's a lot of football players that, I mean, I think it's like the average life expectancy for a football player after retirement's 57, which is pretty fucking crazy. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
that's pretty insane. And I know that, like, Rogan and you and all you guys have talked about concussions and getting hit in the head, and how important that is of a topic to hit on. And it really makes me think, like, twice about, like, well, I want to let my child pursue whatever he wants to pursue that makes him happy, but there might be some restrictions with football and boxing, because it seems like those two sports are definitely two sports that really take a beating, and you really see a lasting impact on, mentally when they retire and as they get older. And it's one of those things where if you start losing your body physically, that's hard, especially if you're an athlete like yourself. I'm sure that's really hard to deal with, not being able to do what you are so used to doing. But mentally, I mean, to start losing your memory and who you are, and being able to put sentences together, and I mean, you're almost like a prisoner inside your own body, and that's even scarier to me.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, maybe I'll steer away my son from football.
have you
You get them into jiu-jitsu, and they don't really want to play other sports after that.
Yeah, so did you got your kids already in jiu-jitsu?
No, he just turned 3. He knows how to do an arm bar from the mount. That's about it. But he's too young.
Yeah. Well, what's how young do people get involved in that? Like, how soon is too soon to get a kid into that?
It all depends. As soon as a kid can start wrestling, if he can wrestle, he can do jiu-jitsu. So I guess kids are doing wrestling at 5, so 4 and 5. I would say that would be the earliest.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of them Gracie kids started when they were 2.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because I just watched your first fight with Gracie last night again. I couldn't sleep. My son was keeping me up all night, and then I was on YouTube on Chromecast going through some stuff, and then I'm like, yo, let me check out that old Eddie Bravo video against Grace. And I'll tell you, man, it's inspiring to see it. And even like how we talked about it last time, how a good song will give you goosebumps. That win and that submission gave me goosebumps every time I watch it, because it's inspirational to see a brown belt who, wasn't very well known at the time, and to see how much work and time and just the pressure of dealing with that, and then to win like that was just unbelievable. And just it's like every time I watch it, I'm like happy for you all over again. And it was an awesome
thing.
Thank
you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
Dude,
it's almost like it didn't happen. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck.
It was 2003, right?
Yeah, it's like another life.
Yeah, and did how much did that change your life? Obviously you beat a legend, and what's weird is all the negative like feedback that you got from like the gi thing and all that other stuff. I mean, it was ridiculous, because you always were so respectful with the way you handled it, and you always gave the Gracie so much props. It was amazing that somebody could misinterpret that.
Yeah, once I dropped the gi, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, not all of them, obviously, but a large percentage of them thought I was turning my back on Jiu-Jitsu, when that nothing could have been further from the truth. I did it for Jiu-Jitsu, just like the song, son.
That's right. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of these old school guys that, they don't want to change that traditional way of having the gi, but like you said during interviews, you were a UFC fan first, and if you're training to be successful in a UFC battle, or you want to do that type of jiu-jitsu, having a gi and all those like pulling and all that stuff's not going to help, because once you fight somebody who doesn't have a gi, you're going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than it's definitely, if you trained in the gi for 10 years, never took it off once, and then you did MMA, you're still going to move very well. I mean, compared to someone who has never trained jiu-jitsu at all, you know, it's going to be clear that you've done jiu-jitsu. I mean, in the gi and no gi, most of the movements are the same. The feet do the same things. The knees do the same thing. The hips do the same thing. And for the most part, the torso does the same thing. The only thing that does things different are the hands. The hands are different. So, I mean, it's a big difference. That's why we train no gi, because we want, or I want, my hands and arms to be doing the exact same thing in grappling class as they would if there was punches. So we had to drop the gi top. But if you know, you spent your whole life yanking and pulling on collars and sleeves, and all of a sudden now you're going no gi and you got to go overhooks and underhooks, your hips are still going to look beautiful, and your legs and your feet and your base, and you're going to be very hard to submit. But those grips, that's the difference right there, and how you set everything up with the grips as opposed to setting things up with underhooks, overhooks, and head controls is different.
Yeah. Well, I took martial arts for 3 years, and my sensei, one thing that he definitely, they definitely had this love-hate thing with the UFC, and it's like because they took out a lot of the traditional stuff, a lot of traditional senseis, and at least from my experience, it seemed like they were anti UFC. They were anti, you know, at least my sensei was. He seemed like there's something about it being not traditional and having these guys who weren't, I guess they weren't at that time, they weren't experts in any one field, but very well-rounded. I don't know, there's something about it rubbed like traditional guys the wrong way, that they didn't respect it or something. And was that a feel throughout? Did you get that kind of feeling too, or was that just a local thing?
Yeah, I would say every traditional martial arts instructor, they had something against the UFC personally, and because the traditional styles in the beginning were all getting smashed, so there was a lot of resentment. But like nowadays, the gi community has kind of turned into a traditional martial art, and there's a lot of people in gi jiu-jitsu that don't like the UFC. They don't watch it, and they blame the lack of jiu-jitsu technique in the UFC to the new rules and the rounds and all that kind of stuff. So to a lot of the people in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu community, the UFC is not it's not a sport that is made for jiu-jitsu anymore, so they don't watch it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it's just, you know, if you just train jiu-jitsu like yourself, obviously you're going to be really, really good at it. And, you know, I think one of those things about MMA is that you have to be so well-rounded that you really can't be an expert in any one field. You kind of have to be pretty good at everything, you know. And so, you know, obviously a boxer will have great hands and they throw a lot more punches than the average MMA fight, and you know, the way they move their heads and all that stuff. But obviously that's just, they're really good at one aspect of fighting. And so I can see how a boxer could also look at MMA and be like, oh, you know what, those guys aren't very good boxers, or they, you know, but it's because it's hard to get really good at you know, so many different arts.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah. Have you one thing I've thought about too, and I was kind of curious to ask you, because I know that you're kind of in a similar position. You obviously, you have a son who's grown up just like I do, and you're obviously very passionate about music. You're passionate about martial arts. And do you ever worry about pushing your passions on your child? And maybe, because one thing I've always worried about is, like, you know, like, I've always wanted to, you know, obviously we all strive to do something with our lives more meaningful or whatever. And I loved basketball, I loved music, and, you know, I never really succeeded at any of these things. And it was one of those things where in the back of my head, I want my kid to also like the same things I like. But, and then I'm always afraid of, well, what if I push him too much? Or what if, you know, I end up wanting him to live the dream that I didn't live, or accomplish the goals that I didn't accomplish? Is that something you ever think about?
I really think about not pushing him and letting him do whatever he wants. Exposing him to jiu-jitsu, exposing him to music. Like right now, we drive around. He loves music, and my wife plays him children's music. He'll have CDs, or during Christmas he'd have a Christmas CD, and during any other time, it's just like really super campy children's songs. And I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, do you have to be at a certain level of intelligence to like really good music? Can a child have really good musical taste? I mean, are these companies that are making these children's songs, are they doing it because you have to have a certain chord progression for children to like it? Do the drums have to be super simple? So I'm listening to these songs, and some of these songs have like little rock and roll. I mean, they got guitar in them. They got guitar, and then they got like drums and like a real drummer, and they're playing a beat that you'd hear in your average rock song or pop song. And then there's vocal melodies, and there's harmonies, but they're all chill. It's sonically, it's not that different than why can't a 2-year-old be really into like Coldplay at least? You know what I mean? And why do we have to play them these campy songs? So I started trying to expose my son to my favorite music, like the greatest songs I've ever discovered. And the first one is Arcade Fire's "The Suburbs," and I play it for him. I repeat the lyrics to him so that when he hears it in the song, he likes that connection. He's like, "Oh, that's what Dada was just saying a bunch of times." Oh, that draws him into the song. So he's so obsessed with that song, and it's one of my favorite all-time songs. And he loves it. He asks for it. He sings along. He doesn't want me to sing. Tells me he's trying to sing along. But he can't really sing, but he's like mouthing the words and stuff, and he's trying to sing. But he loves it. And then we're on our second song now, which is another Arcade Fire song called "Afterlife." Incredible song. And I'll say the words to him over and over, so when he hears it, he locks right in. And he really likes those songs. And I'm like, I'm not going to drive around and listen to those crappy kid songs. I'm going to expose him to the best possible music I can, and see if that has anything to do with his songwriting. Like maybe if a child is exposed to like the greatest music of all time, just incredible melodies, incredible vocal melodies, just and he gets into songwriting. Will he write songs that I put on repeat? That's something that would freak me the fuck out. If my son started writing music that I loved and put on repeat, that would freak me the fuck out.
Well, it makes sense because, you look at it like I kind of think that people talk to their kids like kids for too long and make them listen to kids' music for too long, and almost stunts their growth, because, I mean, even though obviously more complex music and stuff, you look at it like lullabies and a lot of the music that's in like kids' toys, it's simple because it's easier for them to digest. But I feel like if, just like anything, if you put, I mean, kids are always analyzing, they're always listening and trying to figure things out. That's kind of how we've evolved as a species, is just us being curious and us trying to figure things out. And I think, putting music that might not be as simple and is a little bit more complex or a little bit fuller in sound or whatever might actually provoke thought and imagination and so that kind of makes sense. I mean, it instead of just saying, hey, they can only handle or understand this type of music or whatever, give them something more complex, something that kind of maybe gets their pistons in their head moving. And yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun doing that. One by one, I'm just going to have him memorize all my favorite songs and see what that does to him musically, see what kind of music he gets into. Will he be the typical son that gets into music that his father hates? Or will he be those guys? I have a 13-year-old jiu-jitsu student who's into all classic rock stuff because of his father. So he directly got influenced by his father. He loves classic rock. That's it. He doesn't like anything his father doesn't like. But usually, it seems like kids get into stuff that their fathers hate.
Yeah,
or don't like.
No, that's true. I remember a girl I went to school with. She was a huge Marilyn Manson fan when we were kids, and she used to wear Marilyn Manson shirts all the time. Like literally every day, she would wear a Marilyn Manson shirt. And one day, she stopped wearing them, and I'm like, why'd you stop? Why'd you stop wearing that Marilyn Manson shirt? She's like, oh, because my parents like the music now. And I'm like, really? and so it is one of those things where you just rebel, just because. And I'm kind of a big believer of that too. It's just you can't. It's a thin line between like trying to keep your kids safe and then if you cage them and then they become this cage animal that they want to rebel, and it's like this blurred line you kind of have to figure out, when is too much and when do you let go a little bit. And I mean, so you do see a lot of that. You see people who love the music their parents love, and you see people who hate the music that their parents love. So it's just it's both ways, and it's weird because I'm not sure I quite understand what causes one or not the other.
Yeah.
You ever hear the theory of like guitar solos? I heard somebody explain this once, that the reason why guitar solos, those high pitched notes, and also like higher pitched keyboard sounds and stuff like that, the reason why that seems emotional to us and passionate to us is because we're so used to, we as we evolve, we've always, a baby cry is high pitched, and we've always, every time we hear that, we panic or we worry and we want to make sure the baby's safe, and we go to it to hold it or whatever. So something about high pitches that also I guess spark emotion and tap into something, and I guess it's from all the years and years of hearing high-pitched baby cries and going to their, going to make sure that they're okay and checking out on their safety. And so that was a kind of an interesting theory that I heard, that, maybe there's something to it, maybe there isn't, but it seems like it might be something to it.
You know what my theory is on guitar solos?
What?
Is the only reason there's guitar solos is because when dudes are forming bands, you're either the singer or the guitar player. No one wants to be the bass player. Nobody wants to be the drummer. Generally. Drummers are hard to find. If you're a drummer, it's easy for you to find bands. Everybody's looking for a good drummer, solid drummer, because no one wants to fucking haul those things around. I played drums for 10 years. Trust me, I know. I played drums because nobody else wanted to play drums, so I had to. And then bass player, that's one step above the drummer. And, generally speaking, everybody wants to be the singer or the guitar player. So this is where and generally bands start with a singer and a guitar player. And they're both buddies. They're the main dudes in the band. The guitar player writes the music. Singer sings. He generally writes the lyrics. Maybe the guitar player writes the lyrics too. That happens a lot where the guitar player writes the whole song and the singer just fucking sings what the guitar player said. It can be both ways. But bottom line, when they get on stage, everybody is into the singer. If all the girls like to sing, he's number one.
Yeah.
So no matter what, that guitar player is number two. So to kind of even things out, you got to give that guy a solo. And it's just a bunch of two dudes on stage with gigantic egos, and they have such big egos, and they got in. It was like they're a team. They got into metal and rock, which are the only songs that had leads. Indie songs don't have leads, but metal songs, it's a bunch of ego-driven dudes who got into bands so that they can get chicks, myself included, by the way. But that's all it is. It's like, fuck, dude, I'm writing all the music. We're equal. You're the singers. You get all the attention. I got to have at least a minute where I get all the attention. We need to balance it back to me, so I got to shred a little bit. That's what it all comes down to right there.
Well,
and then as the band and as the trends changed and all the ego-driven bands went under, those hair metal bands, and all the indie bands rose and grunge, it wasn't really that much about jerking off on your guitar for a minute per song. A lot of leads started dying. Metal never died, so leads will never die. There'll always be metal around, but generally in pop music, there weren't any leads. Linkin Park's album didn't have any fucking solos, so it became, it's almost like it was too obvious that the guitar player was insecure and he wanted to jerk off in front of the crowd.
That's there's some truth to that. I've never been a huge fan of solos. I think that a lot of times they just throw it in to throw it in, and it doesn't really benefit the song at all. Like that's why when I was growing up in the the 90s and listening to new metal, even though I loved the Iron Maidens and I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan and old Metallica stuff, but there's something I liked about the new metal. I liked the fact that they kind of focused more on songwriting, they focused more on melodies, they focused more on they didn't, even bands like Fear Factor I grew up with, they didn't shy away from doing clean vocals and using keyboards after, and there was less, there's less boundaries on stuff, and that's really what makes the best music. Like any art, once you put boundaries on stuff and you start saying, oh, I want to fit into this genre or I want to fit in that genre, and then you put boundaries on your art, then it restricts you, and then you have a very plain and just overdone style. But that's what I like about music today, is that now with technology and stuff, you really can expand, and there's a lot more bands that use keyboards now, especially metal bands, and you see a lot more mixtures of industrial bands and metal, which are the two genres I love. I love bands like Kami Christ and SITD and bands like that, Rotor Sand and VNV Nation. But I also love the heavy stuff, and you're starting. It's funny because both genres, even though they're very different, they both kind of they respect each other, and you see a lot of a mixing of the two. You see a lot of metal bands who are fans of Skrillex and Deadmau5, and you see Deadmau5 being fans of rock and metal bands. So it's I think that. What's that? I was just at Korn and Limp Bizkit at the LA Forum last Saturday night. I landed from Tennessee and went right to the show. Danny Lohner was there. He's really good friends with Wes Borland. And I show up in the middle of Limp Bizkit's set, and Korn was next. And I'm backstage, and who do I see standing across from me? It's like fucking George Lynch. You know who that is? Why the name sounds familiar, but I can't figure. For some reason, I can't remember what band he's in.
Do you remember the band Dawkins?
Dawkins, yeah.
Breaking the chains around me. Dawkins was kind of huge in the 80s. The guitar player was George Lynch. So it was like Don Dawkins, the lead vocalist, and then George Lynch, the shredder and guitar wizard extraordinaire. And then they had a bass player and the drummer. So it was a Don Dawkins, the singer, and George Lynch. Well, I wasn't a tremendous giant Dawkins fan all the way through the 80s. There was like 1 or 2 years where I really liked him. But the cool thing about George Lynch, the guitar player, he'd have these intros on the albums. They're like, maybe 90 seconds long. The one on the Tooth and Nail album is called Without Warning. And it's such a brilliant, amazing piece of music. It's so good. It stands the test of time. It'll go on forever. It's a beautiful piece of music. And in the intro to Under Lock and Key album, it's called Unchain the Night. The intro to that, again, another epic, spectacular piece of music. But Without Warning, I actually sampled a couple pieces of it and created a Smoke Serpent song, a song that I never released. I haven't released yet. There's about 30 Smoke Serpent songs I haven't released yet, because now that I have top-notch, high-level engineering through Danny and my other boys, Matt Horder, Fredo Arresto, Mr. Denizen, now that I have engineers that are working with me that are high-level, all those old songs that I put together myself and I engineered myself, those are just demos, and they were always demos. They were always, I I engineered all that old shit you see on mastering, the rubber guard, but I was never trying to be an engineer. I was just putting it together as demos. I knew eventually I'd be in the position that I am in right now, where I direct the music. I'm not actually doing any of the engineering. I don't want to do the engineering. I want to sit there and direct. I want to produce and direct. That's what I do, and write, and remix. But now I'm in that position. So, but anyways, I went up to George Lynch and I was like, holy shit, and I told him what I did, and I sampled it, and I created a hip-hop song, and he got really excited. He goes, dude, I would love to hear that. You made a hip-hop song out of Without Warning? I said, I sure did. So he gave me his email, and he was really excited about hearing it, and that made my night. You know, like seeing George Lynch at a Korn concert. It was pretty cool. And I also met the singer from King's X, who's one of my favorite all-time singers as well, Doug Pennick. I met him too. They're working. They're doing a side project together. I don't know if you ever heard of King's X. Have you heard of them?
The name sounds familiar, but I can't. It doesn't ring a bell on any of their songs.
They're like a southern rock band. They have a lot of great songs. It all depends what kind of music you like. If you're just into like super heavy metal or you're one of those dudes that are just into rap, no, it's not going to be for you. You know, in order to be into the certain King's X songs that were amazing, and there's like most bands, I only like my favorite bands, I probably like 15-20% of their music, and the rest is just vanilla for my taste. Same thing with King's X. They have albums where there's nothing on. They might have 4 albums where I didn't hear nothing on, but then they have, Ear Candy, which is incredible. Half the album is amazing. And Faith, Hope, and Love, half of that album is out of fucking control. But, you gotta your record collection's gotta have, Jay-Z to Interpol to Coldplay to Slayer to NWA to Nas to Rihanna to Metallica to Korn, back to Ice Cube, and then Sarah McLachlan. If your record collection looks like that, then you'd love King's X. So certain songs. I'd have to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, there's some bands that are like that they have one great album that I know, like back in the day, Blindside was one. They had that album Silence, which I absolutely love. Refused had that, what was it called? It was the album with New Noise. That was another album that was, really good. And then I didn't like anything else really from them. Bless the Falls first album. In Fear and Faith had their first album, full-length album, was unbelievable. I mean, there's just certain albums that, like, a band just, I don't know if it's the right chemistry or just the right state of mind or what, but everything clicks and they just come out with this beautiful, amazing album. And then it's just hard, it's hard to recreate that. And then sometimes it's not till an album or two later,
Yeah, like we were talking before, most bands, once they lose that magic for writing amazing material, they rarely get it back. Rarely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very rare.
It's funny sometimes.
Some bands do though. Yeah. Some bands do. Some bands like Peter Murphy, for instance. He was the singer for Bauhaus. He's one of my favorite singers of all time. I like his solo career. He's had like 10 solo albums or whatever. And his first 3 albums were fucking incredible. He went solo. He was loving life because those albums were incredible, magical. And then there was some albums where he got really into drugs and got in a bad way. It just became nuts. And he was putting out like 3 albums in a row where there was only one good song on the album. And but for me, if you put out an album and there's only one song that I put on repeat, that's good enough for me, really, because that's rare. rare. For me to put a song on repeat, that's a rare one. That's got to be fucking in my soul, deep down in my heart, for me to do that. I'm not gonna put no damn song on repeat.
Yeah.
And once I get through it and I hear it 1,000 times, I'll never put it on repeat again. But it's that beginning, the first 3 weeks I'm into that song. Boom! I'll put a song over and over and over.
Yeah, there's a couple of bands like that. I remember the singer of Motor Grader, who is now the singer of Five Finger Death Punch. He had this side project called Ghost Machine, and actually the singer of Ultraspank, Pete Murray, I think helped produce it or engineer it or something like that, or help write the songs. And there's this one song on that album called God Forbid. And it's just this amazing, beautiful song. And the rest of the album was all right, but just because of that one song, it was worth buying. It was worth listening to. And, same thing with Flaw. Flaw had a couple, that was one of my favorite vocalists growing up. Flaw, Stabbing Westward. There's just so many great voices. And now you definitely don't see as many great, clean vocalists, not that I listen to, like in the metal scene, that really catches my attention that much. But In Fear and Faith, I think, is one of the recent ones that I think could really sing, that really had a unique and awesome voice. But yeah, I mean, it is weird how, even if that one album has one song that you absolutely love that sticks with you forever, it's worth purchasing and it's worth getting.
Yeah, I agree.
And what's your opinion on popular music? I know my buddy, my co-host who does the show with me sometimes, he's a huge Pearl Jam fan, and we always get, he always makes the argument that if they've been around for this long and they've sold this many albums, then it's because they're good. And I always make the argument that we all have albums that sold 100 copies and we think are revolutionary and really strike a chord with us, and we all have albums that sold 1 billion and suck. And my opinion on popular music is that, I've heard other people say this too, that if you keep listening to music over and over again, like I guess it works the same way propaganda works. Like, that old quote that if you keep repeating something over and over again, then it becomes true. Well, a lot of people believe music's kind of similar, that if you keep hearing something over and over again, your brain will mistake you being familiar with it with you liking it. And sometimes I wonder if it's, if music is popular strictly because we like it, or how much of it has to do with music's popular because record companies just push it on top of you until you eventually end up liking it because you've heard it so many times. I mean, obviously, I think there's a little bit of both, but what do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. It won't work on me. You can play a song 1 million times, and it'll never grow. Never. If I hate it, it'll never grow on me, ever. The kind of songs that grow on you, you figure it out on that third listen, that fourth listen max. If you listen to it 5 times, if I listen to a song 5 times and I ain't feeling anything, I would never have listened to it 5 times.
Yeah.
For me, I got to get it on that first listen, at least if I like it a little bit. Like my newest favorite song is called Afterlife, and that's by Arcade Fire. First time I heard it, I thought, okay, this is good. I got to remember what this is. This is good. It could be really, really good, or it could be just good and just stay at that same level. And I heard it again, and I bought it, and then I heard it again, and I'm like, okay, this is good. It's good. Damn, there's something in there. I like this. And then by the fourth listen, damn, fuck. I put it on repeat 20 times. I couldn't stop listening to it. So I knew it was good from the first listen. I just didn't know how good it was going to be. It got really, really, really good. So my brain works a little different. There's no way you're going to take a shitty song and make me like it. But I can see that working for people that aren't music fanatics. And there's a lot of people who never buy music. They can give a shit. The music that they put on the radio, that's good enough for them. They're not into it that much. They got other shit they got to do. They're really not fascinated by music. They like it. They'll go to the club and they got their jams and whatever's most popular on the radio. They like it. Oh, that's my jam. But there's so many people who don't seek music, don't pay attention, don't know what years albums came out and shit like that. They don't care about any of that shit. I do, though. So, and obviously you do. So it's harder to fool an expert.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people I've met that I've asked, you know, what's your favorite artist or what's your favorite genre of music or whatever, and they're like, oh, whatever's on the radio. And I mean, maybe it's just me being, I guess, a cunty, you know, music fan and just being an asshole. But my first reaction is, well, you're not really a music fan, because who the fuck listens to the radio and that's their favorite stuff? I mean, the radio sucks, and if it wasn't for, you know, satellite radio and Pandora and all these other apps, I mean, there'd be nothing else to listen to. So I mean, when people say, oh, I just listen to whatever's on the radio, what you're really telling me is that you're not really a huge music fan, but you like it in the background while you go on a drive.
Yeah, and if they're at a club and all that. Hey, listen, I got 5 minutes, man. Then I gotta go. So.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad. I was just gonna ask you too. Well, let's talk about before I forget, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and doing this 4-part episode, because we did one quite a while ago. And so thanks a lot for being with me. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a super busy dude, and with with obviously training and doing your podcast, which I love, and doing music and doing everything you do, it's super hard to find time. So I'm glad that we found some time to come on, even if it was a little late over here on the East Coast. But before I forget, you wanted to talk about, I believe you mentioned in one of the shows, the EBI coming up. What is it, EBI 3?
EBI 3 coming up Sunday, March 22nd, just a few days away, in downtown LA. It's streaming live all around the world from budovideos.com/EBI. It's a 16-man submission-only tournament with it's a 170-pound division. Gary Tonin returning to defend his title. He won EBI 1, so he's back. We got Corinder Abedian, who's Guncore, his best guy. He's amazing. I put him in there personally. We had to get Corinder in there. Corinder Abedian is amazing. And then we got Enrico Coco, another amazing leg lock specialist.
For people who don't know what EBI is, how would you briefly explain the rules and how, what exactly is it?
It's like the UFC, but without strikes. Just pure submission, just pure jiu-jitsu, pure grappling. And it's just like the UFC, but there's no striking. Do
you guys do points, or do you just do, is there points in EBI, or do you do like...
No, it's submission only, no points.
Okay, so it's like when you fought Gracie, it was, and that's what makes it exciting. When there isn't points, there's no, you're going for the win the whole fight, and you're not just trying to, score points.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's going to be an awesome tournament, and the first two were awesome. If you go to YouTube and search Eddie Bravo Invitational EBI 1 or Eddie Bravo Invitational EBI 2, it's the first two events are free on YouTube. You can check it out there, and that'll prep you for EBI 3 coming up this Sunday.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you're really pushing for this jiu-jitsu thing, because I love the fact that there's people out there who are interested in just watching jiu-jitsu, because I think it's a great art. And I think, unfortunately, with a lot of people who watch UFC being more interested in the striking, kind of jiu-jitsu is what some people consider the boring part of the fight. But if you really start getting into it, and especially like your second fight with Gracie, and watching you break it down on the Rogan podcast, I mean, it was amazing to hear exactly what was going through your head and how you're breaking down every single thing and how your brain was ticking. Just every single move was well thought out. And I think when you see something like that, you really appreciate the genius and the chess match that really is jiu-jitsu. So it's awesome to have people like you really, make it fashionable to be into it and hopefully bring some new attention and some new fans to it.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. Also, jump on my SoundCloud.com/Eddie-Bravo. I just released a new song. It's called Too Late by my band Smoke Serpent. And I got a bunch of my remixes up there. I got probably 4 or 5 Smoke Serpent songs up there. That's my main band. But I remix a lot of stuff and work with different artists and stuff. But you can download everything for free. I'm not charging anything. It's not worth a penny. So thank you, dude, for having me, man. I got to take off, and we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. I really appreciate it, man. Keep up the great work. I'm looking forward to more Smoke Serpent video songs, more Eddie Bravo radio podcast and all your great work. So from all your fans, we really appreciate it, man. And thank you so much for taking time to be with me.
Thank you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya. Thanks, Eddie. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for listening. What you just heard was a 3-part interview I did in March 2015 with Eddie Bravo. Now, what you're about to hear is a 2014 interview I did with Eddie Bravo, which was the very first interview I did with him, but it was kind of short and the quality wasn't very good, so I didn't know if I was going to share it, which I never ended up releasing it, and then he ended up giving me the opportunity to redo the interview, which is what you just heard. So if you want to listen to the first initial interview, the quality is a little iffy, but it's still probably worth listening to. I'm going to put at the end of this podcast. Also, I want to correct some information about the CDC whistleblower. The doctor who was the CDC whistleblower who worked on the study on vaccines and the link to autism was, and specifically the MMR vaccine, was Dr. William Thompson. Dr. Bill Thompson also came out and talked to another doctor, a researcher, Brian Hooker, which I believe was the person who kind of broke the news. But you can just look up CDC whistleblower. I talked about the link or the increase in autism going up 3 to 4%, but I was actually incorrect. It was 340% in African American babies. So it's which is a significant percentage. That's, I mean, pretty unreal. So, but just look up CDC whistleblower. If you just Google that in a regular search, you can look that up and you can find more information on it. Obviously, this is a topic that really catches my attention at the moment in my life because of the fact that I have a newborn, and it's a conversation I have to have with the wife. It's a conversation I have to have with the pediatrician, and it's information I have to research to make the best decision I can for me and my family. So it's definitely a hard topic. I know a lot of people are afraid to bring it up, and just like myself, I've had some of those conversations with people where they kind of look at you like you're crazy, but you can't let the fear of people looking at you like you're crazy affect your decision making, and also a decision that might change your child's life forever. And there's just too much information out there not to look at both sides and not to at least be a little skeptical about pharmaceutical companies. So obviously pharmaceutical companies have been corrupt in the past with issues with Merck's had issues with their vaccines. It was either the swine or flu vaccine that had issues in the past, people having crazy side effects. You look at the Marisol, which is I believe like a mercury preservative, which was in the flu vaccine, which I believe they were giving the kids, which I think finally was out. But I mean, when a pediatrician tells me, oh, there's never been an issue with vaccines, there's never been any link, and then you bring up the CDC whistleblower and they kind of look at you with a stare look and they don't know how to respond, I mean, that kind of scares me a little bit, and that's what happened with me. But enough talk about that. Like I said, if you're interested in the topic, look it up, and you can find more information on it. It's very interesting. There's also a guy called Gary Knoll. His last name is Null, and he's done a bunch of documentaries. You can look him up too on vaccines and just natural health remedies and all that stuff. So he's a really interesting one. And John Rappaport, who I've had on my show, was one of the people who really put focus on the CDC whistleblower story. And Nancy Gabberty, I also talked to her about vaccines. So if you want to check out those shows, Nancy Gabberty is a health and wellness expert, nutritionist. We just talk about everything from diet and exercise and natural remedies, natural medicines, and the history of all that. So really interesting podcast if you guys want to check that out. And that was a recent one I did not too long ago. So thanks again, guys. I'll leave you with that initial first interview I did with Eddie Bravo last year. And hopefully the quality is good enough where you can get through it. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So let's get right into music, because I actually, that's one of the topics I love to talk about, because I, like yourself, I also do music, and I kind of was in a bunch of bands, metal bands and stuff like that, and then end up jumping into doing my own project as I think life gets busy and it gets really hard to keep people together in a group. It seems easier to do like little projects on the side and stuff like that than it is to kind of get 5 dudes to all agree on a sound and practice time and all that stuff. So what was your influences growing up? Well, what got you into music? What did you like, and how did Smoke Serpent come around?
Oh man.
Long story, right?
Well, I've been producing music, dude. I say I've been producing music since I was 10, but I mean, I wasn't in the studio at 10. What I mean by that is at 10, me and my best friend, we actually formed a band and we wrote songs. They're the worst songs ever. I played drums on boxes. My drumsticks were twigs that I carved from a tree. I love making drumsticks. And I had like a 4-piece kit. They were all boxes. And I would tape a piece of paper to where I would hit the top of the box. So it would have like a little snap to it. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I just felt like I needed to tape a piece of paper because it was snappier. And they would break right. I mean, right away I would break the paper. But still, you would get that snap for a while. Even when the paper's like all tore up, you still get a snap. But then you got to keep changing the paper. Then you take 4 pieces of paper, and it lasts longer. But anyways, my whole life I was in bands, primarily terrible speed metal bands, real bad, real bad. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. All we knew is it had to be static. The lyrics had to be Luciferian. So then, you know, I started playing drums in speed metal bands only because no one else on my block wanted to play drums and everyone already had a guitar. And I was the last one to get an instrument. I was always the poorest of all my friends. And so I started playing drums. But right away in bands, even as a kid, 13, 14, I was, even though I was playing drums, I was writing songs, writing lyrics, arranging everything. I was already fascinated with arrangement, like how songs actually get put together. I would just listen to other songs. As a kid, I'm like, damn, I'm going to have to start understanding what the fuck I love. I never really understood it like a drummer needs to understand it. So, anyway, and plus my very first drum lesson, I did drum lessons with this guy named Brian Johnson, like the singer for AC/DC. And when I got to his room, you know, since I was playing drums automatically, the drums are the best shit, and the drummers are the best. You know how kids are.
Yeah.
Like my friend got a free bass guitar, so all of a sudden these bass players are the best. And he plays bass. And he gets into Steve Harris and Teddy Lee, and he's a bass. It was only because that's what his dad gave him. His dad didn't even know like the difference between a guitar and a bass. He thought he was giving his son just a guitar. He didn't know he gave him a bass. So that's how that guy started playing bass. By accident. I started playing drums because I was the last motherfucker. Plus, I knew how to air drums. I Love It Loud by Kiss. Like, real super easy drum beat. But I thought I could play it. Because I could air drum to it. So I figured, I know how to play drums. I can play I Love It Loud. So,
what was most of your influence? Because actually, your last podcast, I heard that you played some Refused in between the break, which was pretty badass. Because that song "New Noise" was just a killer back in the day, and I used to love blaring that song. And it's cool because it seems like you're into a lot of the same types of music I am. It's weird that a lot of people who listen to metal also get intrigued with industrial music and vice versa. Like I remember growing up and like I loved heavy bands, and I also liked the Stabbing Westwards, the Gravity Kills, the Nine Inch Nails, the bands that were messing around with like weird sounds and noises and keyboards and stuff like that. And it seems like there's always a cross, and especially today, it seems like a lot of artists today, it's like acceptable to kind of be a heavy band with keyboards, where for a while you didn't see, besides like Fear Factory way back in the day, you didn't see a whole lot of bands that were messed around with that early in the 90s and stuff like that, and now you definitely see a lot more of it. But I remember hearing a story on your I don't know if you're on your podcast or Rogan's podcast, but you were telling the story about how you guys were kind of ahead of your time and kind of messed around with like samples and keyboards and metal and stuff like that. And it's funny because my first band we did the same thing. We obviously like your story, we sucked pretty bad, even though we thought we were good. And but it was definitely one of those things where we're trying to find a fun way of mixing two genres of music we liked. We just couldn't do it right at the time. but we had like the right idea. So you were also into industrial, also into metal, not one more than the other. You kind of just liked them both, and or were you a metalhead kid first and then kind of jumped into industrial later?
Well, I claimed metal first, because back in the 80s when you were 13, 14, 15, 16, you had to claim either you're going to be metal and that's all you like, or you're going to like rap and that's all you like, or you're going to pick a new wave and dress preppy. You're going to do that one. Well, you got to fucking pick it and you got to stick to it and you can't cross over. But everybody did cross over, but they did it secretly and shit. So I claimed metal, but secretly I liked Depeche Mode and The Cure.
Dude, I love Depeche Mode. It's
and Duran, but I wouldn't really care. I wouldn't talk about it too much with my friends. That was just something I kept to myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm too insecure at that point. So, and when Pretty Hate Machine came out, I had a friend named John who was into everything. He would dress either punk, if he went to a punk show, he would dress metal. He went to a metal show, he would go like a hip-hop show, and he would dress hip-hop. He was every fucking thing, but the one thing that was consistent, he always had a full face of makeup. He always wore makeup. So he would be a punker with makeup, because some punkers would wear makeup, didn't Sex Pistols wear makeup, kind of.
Yeah.
So he was like that when he'd be punk. But he'd be super glam too, easily. He loved going super glam too. He had a wig on and shit. He had long hair since he was 10, but he lost it all when he was 18. So he really did have long hair his whole life. And he was a kid. He was raised in a family of metalheads. And then he lost his hair, and he was in my band. And I told that story in my podcast, dude. This story's awesome. So I got sick of playing speed metal around 18, 19. I heard Anthrax and Public Enemy get together. They just Bring the Noise. They did it in a metal version. I was blown away. It was like Anthrax doing rap, but with Chuck D rapping. It was legit. It was awesome. I wanted a whole band like that. So right away, me and James, who was in the speed metal band with me, he was a guitar player, black guitar player in a speed metal band. I was playing drums on the side. We just started making rap. It was like Bring the Noise. It was just I wanted to make Nine Inch Nails type rap. Right away. This is 1991. 1991.
Well, I heard you talk about it once, and you made a good point about rap, because that's kind of the thing that kind of turned me off too. Was I remember you saying once how like the beats were a turn off to you because they use a lot of these like classical instruments or like jazzy type beats and like just things that weren't like, especially when you were listening to like Nine Inch Nails and metal that's like very like edgy and distortion and heavy, because even industrial music can be heavy in its own way with the big snare and the lead keyboards. Like I'm always like, why don't they add that to rap? If they added that to rap, because I enjoyed the lyrics, I enjoy the poetry that goes into it. I like Low Key, I like Akela, I like some of the more underground rap. But it's just one of those things where the beats were always a turn off to me. And I'm just like, dude, if they only got somebody from like the industrial scene to make rap beats, I'm like, you'd have like the baddest rapper around, but unfortunately, like you said, a lot of the hip hop and rap, they use a lot of just old samples and stuff like that. And it was same thing to me. It was kind of like a turn off.
Yeah. So when I finally heard, I did like Run DMC. I go, okay, that I like. That's cool. But it was more like AC/DC rap, Run DMC. It wasn't really like Bring the Noise. Bring the Noise is more what I was doing. I was doing speed metal. I'm like, shit, I was sick of it. I was burnt out. So, and then we got so into my black guitar player started rapping, and I just started becoming like the guy who put the music together. That was our side project. And we fucking loved it. We loved it way more than the speed metal shit we were doing. So we finally, the speed metal just fucking fell apart. We left that shit, and we decided to move to Hollywood and do it right. Move to Hollywood. Let's do a metal, rap, electronic, fucking everything, even a little funk. We were like mixing in funk, little Red Hot Chili Peppers licks and shit. I wanted the ultimate name. I thought it was going to be the ultimate band, the ultimate name. But I thought Black and Kill Symphony was the shit. I thought that was the greatest name ever. I'm like, I'll never forget that day. When you hear Black and Kill Symphony, you'll never forget it. I thought it was the ultimate. So, and that was a mixture of everything. And right away, what me and James decided to do, we get to Hollywood and we put together a fucking demo, just me and him. I did all the music. He did all the rap. He played a little guitar on it too. I would always stick a lead in there for him. And, because he can play leads and I really can't. I've never been a lead player. I never progressed that way. I was always more fascinated with creating songs than shredding. I just wasn't an athlete on my instrument either.
Well, isn't that like two different talents? Because that's the other thing. Like we used to play shows, it was the same thing. Like we used to go to shows and like play with bands that are way more talented at their art, you know, like they're just a shredder on the guitar or just a drummer that was amazing, and then their original songs would suck, and you realize like, holy shit, it's like two different things. Like we always assume like if somebody's a really good guitar player, then that means he must write really good songs, but it's a completely different talent. It's a different skill.
The opposite. It's completely opposite. Most shredders can't write songs.
Exactly.
I would say 98% of them. Well, actually, it's easy to learn how to write a song. It's easy to put a song together. Anybody can put a song together. You just need basic understanding of music theory, understand that there's some laws in songs. You can break any law you want, but generally there's laws for a goddamn reason. There's a reason it's verse, chorus.
Yeah.
And then there's a reason it's like that. It's like, it's in our soul. That's what we don't want to be challenged. Once you start putting songs together that are really, really challenging and very technical and odd meter and shit.
Well, there's a theory to that. I've heard a guy explain it, and it's funny because I always wondered. I'm like, what is it that people are always drawn to simple music, like or something that, like you said, isn't challenging? And I can't remember what podcast I heard him talk on. I think it was Smells Like Human Spirit podcast, and he was telling this theory of he thinks that what happens is when something like as humans we're like used to simple things. We're used to trying to make life as easy as possible. And he also says that sometimes it's a combination of simple things. So if something's simple, that's, you know, it's easy for us to digest. There's not a lot of thinking. And, you know, so it's, and also he says that what the music industry does a lot of is play a lot of the same type of stuff. And if they keep force feeding you a song, then your brain will mix up you liking a song for you finding it familiar. So it's just like thing, and it makes sense because sometimes you listen to a song so many times on the radio that the first time you hear it, you're like, this is fucking horrendous, and then after a while you're like, okay, now I can tolerate it, and you can't get the song out of your head, you know. So it kind of does make sense. And if you go from like the beginning of civilization till today, we've always tried to find easier ways to do things. So like finding that easy path of less resistance does make sense. So I guess with music it's probably the same idea.
Yeah, music is I don't quite, I understand simple music, super simple music, that's great. I understand it. I understand, like, Coldplay they got some of the most simple shit on the planet, and I think Coldplay has like 90% of their music, maybe 90% at this point, is vanilla, and I'm not into it. It's just another Coldplay vanilla song. But they have like 15 throughout their career. They have about 15 amazing goddamn songs, and about 70 that I'm not that into. So don't think that I'm all into Coldplay. But you have to recognize when they put together a fucking a great goddamn song and they do it 15 times. You gotta. To me, that's an amazing band. Even though the majority of their music I don't like it. If you can get 15 shit and they have, and their songs, you look at Coldplay. Nobody is trying to shred. Nobody. It's not about that. It's not about shredding.
Well, it's putting the ego aside, right? Put the ego aside and just do what benefits the song.
What is best for the song? We we know that it can't be too complicated for the masses. Nobody really wants to hear awesome music, just a small niche. There's like the geeky people that want to hear crazy shit. And then there's a lot of gray area in between and all that shit. But, you know, on one end you have Coldplay, and then on the other end you have Dream Theater or those that style of band. Like, everybody is a shredder, and everyone is going to get their time, and everyone can shred from a fucking song. You know what I mean? They can. But even Dream Theater, even they realize that it's good to come back to the basic laws of 4/4 every now and then, or something simple where the guitar is just not shredding. It's playing something simple, and the bass says, dude, you know what? It's best right here. I just play. I got plenty of time throughout the song where I can shred, but right here, I don't need to shred. Every now and then, it's good to be stuck down to the wall. But then you have Coldplay where nobody is ever even thinking about shredding. They're not even tempted. They feel good by playing music that has nothing to do with their ego. It's all about they're all putting in. They're not overplaying shit. Sometimes they do shred. Sometimes there's a little shredding, but they're not. It's not what it's about.
No, it's not.
You know.
Well, I think, yeah.
And the singer's not trying to he's not screaming like early Jeff Tate. You know what I mean? He's just like, it's just whatever's best for the song. You know, but
yeah, I think that's huge. I think that, you know, your ego can get in the way in a lot of things. And I think when you're in a band, people's ego that you might not even realize exists, like, come out in the band when they start doing parts that don't necessarily benefit the song. You know, they do things to, like you said, to show off. And vocals is the same thing. You can do a song. I mean, some of my favorite songs are with singers who just stay within their range and don't try to do anything crazy. I mean, look at Rihanna, for example. Rihanna, it's not that Rihanna can't sing, but she's not an amazing singer where she's Mariah Carey or going crazy, like these crazy R&B solos with your voice and low and high or whatever. And she like stays within her range. She just, obviously she doesn't write any of her own shit, so I can't give her credit for it. But you know, whoever manages her says, hey, do these catchy songs, no need to kind of, you know, show off or whatever, and she sells tons of albums. And so I think that.
Yeah, you know, exactly. Rihanna is not trying to sound like, 99% of these chicks that show up and they want to be singers, they want to be R&B singers, and they're all trying to sound like Beyonce, or they're all trying to sound like Christina Aguilera. Well, Christina Aguilera is trying to sound black. You know what I mean? When Christina Aguilera is trying to sound like R&B. The bitch can sing. She's one of the greatest singers of all time, for damn sure. But I'm not really into that kind of tone.
Me
you know
either.
What I mean? I don't like it when I don't really like that super R&B tone. I'm just not feeling it. I don't buy R&B songs or anything. Although, like on my podcast, I talked about there are a few R&B songs that I really, really, really like. But they're rare. They're rare.
Yeah.
But there are a few, and I love ballads, man. I love ballads. So there are a couple R&B ballads that I love. I love like Lauryn Hill's X Factor. That song is good, and I don't even like R&B, but when you listen to X Factor, shit, that girl is talented. She's fucking amazing. I love Lauryn Hill, man. That bitch is awesome. But shit. Anyway, so that was our problem when we decided to drop the speed metal and put together this metal, rap, industrial, gothic, electronic band with samples fucking everywhere. The way I sampled, I would just actually record pieces of movies and interviews, like interviews with the Night Stalker and like get quotes from him, and I would just record that shit. I wasn't like sampling shit. I was recording it and putting it on a cassette tape, and we would play live to it. We would practice to it, and the drummer would be playing to a click track from that 8-track cassette recorder.
That's crazy.
So one track would be his click, and then we'd have 3 tracks where we could put keyboards or samples on. You know what I mean? And that's what we did. We had a keyboardist for a while, but he overplayed everything and got bored. We needed a guy that could just, with one finger, press one button, and then not, you know what I mean? Nobody wants to do that. They want to play over shit. So once we lost him, I was like, dude, you know what? Fuck keyboard players. We're gonna run that shit through that Tascam, baby. So we were running shit through the board, but it was through a cassette Tascam. So we were guerrilla style, but we were mixing it all up. My drummer was a shredder. He graduated from MI, and he was one of them shredder Dream Theater type drummers. He was a little Indian kid, Surya Kelsey. A little Indian guy, a little Indian dude who shredded on drums, and he was so down for the idea of Black and Teal Symphony. This was back in 1991, 92, and we got a fucking shredder down for it. And the cool thing is he was rich. He had a rich family, so he had the best shit. He got an electronic kit and an acoustic kit, and he played it together, and he played both. He had an electronic bass drum pedal right there ready to go. So we were already high level when it came to the drums. He was willing to play a click with that 4-track. You know what I mean? He was playing it. He played to a click perfectly. He was a fucking machine. So he was the one who was running all that shit. He would press play on the tape live, and then we would go. We would follow his lead, and he'd be playing along with this click track with samples and keyboards that I put on. But anyways, what we fucked up is, although I dropped the speed metal, I kept the speed metal arrangement. I had the Linkin Park strategy, which is metal, rap, a lot of synth, real drums, fake, synthetic drums, mix it all up. We were doing that shit when they were in second grade. I already had that shit put together, that formula. But we had speed metal arrangements. These songs, these rap metal songs, were like, one was 11 minutes, average was 7 or 8 minutes, with all these parts in them. And long, so can you imagine, it was like Metallica, but with synths and rap beats and stuff. But those kind of arrangements, like Master of Puppets type of arrangements and Justice for All type arrangements, where there was just like, it was too much. So we didn't do it simple. It was a slow evolution. We had odd meter rap. Black and Teal Symphony was odd meter rap. We took too much. We didn't leave enough behind. We took too much with us, too much from the speed metal with us. We should have left more behind. But we didn't want to jump straight to, 3-minute songs, 4-minute songs, super formula. I was all anti that shit. Fuck that. It's got to be complicated arrangements and all this shit. Every song's got to be a masterpiece. That was my idea. And then we couldn't get a deal. We had record interest. We had horrible experience with a Disney label. They were trying to assign metal bands and shit. Horrible experience with them. Anyways, it just didn't work. It fell apart. But right before at the end, we started losing all band members. Bass player, drummer, they all left. It fell apart. Me and James, that was back to me and James. We started it, and now we're back alone. We just decided, hey, why don't we fucking do all these goddamn songs? Everyone's telling us our songs are too long, and they got to be more simple, and we have too many parts, and it's too odd meter. It can't be all odd meter and shit. Why don't we remix our own shit, like for a goof? We'll make commercial versions of all our songs for a goof. And we decided one last project. We all got together, bass player, drummer, when we did it, just for, we knew we were breaking up. It was falling apart. But we did it, and we fucking, man, it was awesome. We loved it. And me and James just said, fuck it. This is what we're going to do. What the hell are we doing? Why are we trying to impress these musicians? Let's keep it fucking simple. We've been idiots this whole time, trying to impress, so insecure that we have to write these complicated songs and shit. Don't have the balls to do simple shit. That's why I started looking at it. I'm like, fuck, it actually takes more balls to do simple shit. Like, we're going to keep it simple and still rock the goddamn world. And you're still going to fucking like it. You know, that kind of attitude. Instead of, man, we got to make sure that our riffs have all these notes to impress all these geeks and all that shit. And I like that. I like that there's people like that, and I could appreciate some shredding every now and then, but the song's got to be good. If you're shredding and the song's not good, I don't really care. You got to make the song good, then I'll hear the shredding, then I'll enjoy the shredding, and I love that goddamn shredding, because it's over a good plate of music. But, so we did it, but we decided, me and James, this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep it simple and do what Smoke Serpent's doing now. We decided, what Smoke Serpent's doing now, we decided to do that shit in 1997. That it took us from 91 to 97 that we evolved, and we started, me and James, went through a whole band, went through a manager, almost got signed, lost a manager, lost the band members. Now it's me and James. We finally realized that these long-ass, complicated songs are just, it's not something we want to do. We want to keep it simple. We should have been doing it. Who knows what would have happened if we would have just figured that shit out right from the beginning. But anyways, he ends up getting cancer. He ends up getting leukemia. He's not dead. He's alive, but he almost died, and he went through so much shit that the last thing on our minds was putting together this band. That we finally figured out the formula. He got cancer. It was horrible there for a while, but now he's awesome. He's still alive, and he's still a beautiful person. And man, I love James to death, and been on the podcast a few times, and he'll be back soon. I love that guy. He's one of the greatest guys on the planet. Love that dude. So then, man, after that was 97, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Started smoking weed. And once I started smoking weed, I realized how retarded I've been being with Black and Kill Symphony, man. I really realized it. I realized it so much, I decided that I was just going to play just like ballads. All this shit came oozing out. I just wrote ballad after ballad, like with a female singer. Her name was Gina. She was a stripper. She had a Mazzy Star type voice. And we just started writing music, and everything was a ballad, man. It was all acoustic with synthesizer. It was like Depeche Mode Cure ballads, with the female chicks. So it was like Mazzy Star-ish. It was kind of like Bjork, sort of. That's all I fucking wanted to do. I didn't even want to pick up my electric guitar. I just fell in love with the acoustic guitar for the first time in my life. I loved the acoustic guitar. Everything was just acoustic ballads. If you listen to there's some face down demos out there floating around the internet. All that shit's just shitty, terrible demos that I was putting together. Just ideas. They were all ideas. They were all like, this is, my idea was always to put songs together in demo form and then work with high-level engineers to make it sound beautiful while I directed. That was always my plan, and that's what I'm doing now. I never planned to be this amazing engineer. I'm not that guy to fucking always update the latest computer and all that shit. I'm so far behind. I'm not that guy. I know to be good, you got to keep up with all that shit. That's too much work for me. I need guys that are obsessed with that shit. There's awesome guys out there where I put together the demos, and then here's the demo turned in. And that's how Martin Gore works from Depeche Mode. He's not an amazing engineer. All he does is put together demos. He knows how I can engineer enough. I can work Pro Tools enough to put together music. All the old stuff you've heard on the internet, that's just me on Pro Tools, like putting together demos, not even trying, not even spending time making the drums sound good and all that shit. I just like demos that I just put together, and I knew eventually one day someone who really, really knew what they're doing on the engineering side would finish or redo all the songs, and that's the plan. All the old songs that I've ever done, I'm going to redo them. The plan is slowly redo them, but slowly put out new songs too, back and forth, and just dump them up on SoundCloud. Fuck a label. Fuck someone telling me what to do. Now, with technology the way it is and with SoundCloud, you know what? The only label I would sign with is someone that's life-changing, someone that's going to come at me with a serious offer that I can't refuse. But like an independent label, they're not going to... I have more money than independent labels. I mean, I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I got more followers than these independent labels. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sign with an independent label. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm working with Danny Lohner, and he's fucking amazing. We're working on 2 new songs right now. They're probably I think 2 of the best things I ever produced, man. I think people are going to enjoy it. If you like Smoke Serpent, you're going to really like the next 2 songs, or even the next 3 songs, really. But that's what I'm doing now. Yeah. Now I'm just putting one song out at a time, not even thinking about an album, and throw it up on SoundCloud. Have another song ready to go. There's always songs. I'm working with a bunch of different engineers. Mr. Denizen, he's one of the engineers I work with. Matt Horder, he's another one of the engineers I work with. Fredo, Arresto, he's another one of the engineers I work with. So I got about, and then of course Danny Loner, 4 or 5 different guys. There's a couple other guys that I work with as well too. But now I can do what I always wanted to do with technology. All I do is direct. I'm not actually doing any of the engineering. I'm just arranging, directing, and creating new parts and putting, anytime, even when I put together a remix, I'm adding parts to it. So, I do come up with all that stuff. I do add to it, but as far as engineering goes, I don't do shit. I don't do anything. I just direct. I just say, let's change this. I like that better. I don't like that. Let's switch that to that. Turn this up. I don't like that. Let's do this. Every song that I've ever remixed, that was my project. I wanted to remix this. So that's how I collaborate. I pick the song, and my engineer, he remixes the parts of the songs that I want to remix, and I pretty much don't do shit except for directing.
Well, the cool thing about technology now is that you can kind of, like you said, you can say fuck you to record companies, and you can kind of, I really don't see any reason for any, artist to really sign with a record label when you can release most of the stuff on your own. You can put it on iTunes, you can put it on Google Play, you can put all your music out, and then you can use social media for marketing. So just like, back in the day, you really did have to go through domestic radio. And if you didn't have domestic radio, you're fucked. Where now today, nothing.
Hey.
Yep.
You know what? I gotta get out. I gotta get out of here, man. I'm about to teach class. I'm already 10 minutes late.
Oh, my bad.
Hey, listen. Let's do this. Let's save this, and we'll finish this tomorrow or the next day. Let's make it nice and long. So half an hour ain't too long. Ain't long enough.
No, it's not.
We'll set it up later. I gotta go.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate it.
Thank you, dude. See ya.
Yep, bye.
I believe in the ripple effect.